Thank you very much, Supervisor Barger, and to all the supervisors for inviting me. So we are in the midst, in the Jewish community, of the holiday of Hanukkah, and it is a holiday that celebrates light over darkness. It celebrates freedom over oppression. It celebrates a sense of the miraculous in our world. And so I would like to bring that energy and that spirit to this meeting and to bless this gathering with those feelings, in part because the Jewish community, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, and we're seeing a rise in hate speech all around our country. And so the message of Hanukkah is that we stand against that we stand opposed to that by bringing light and freedom. But I'm also here representing Friends Indeed, which serves people experiencing homelessness and poverty in the city of Pasadena. And so there's a lot of darkness in their lives, as I see. You can see every day walking into this building. But I bless us to bring light and hope to those who are suffering on our streets and those who are suffering often in an invisible life, feeling that nobody sees them. And so I hope that in this meeting and in the spirit of going forward in our city, that we see people, we see them, we bring them hope, we bring them light, and we lift ourselves up in doing that. And in the name of Spirit and all that is bigger than us, I invite us to say Amen. Good morning. Veterans may render a hand salute. Everyone else, please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi, for leading us. Please join me in thanking Rabbi Joshua Levine Grader for leading us in this morning's invocation. Yes. Yes. Rabbi Grader lives in Pasadena, was ordained at the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1999. He served as a pulpit rabbi for 16 years, including 12 years at the Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, where he established himself as a spiritual leader, social justice activist, and interfaith coalition builder. And Pasadena is so fortunate to have you, Rabbi. You served on many boards and committees and currently is serving as a board president of the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. He has been the executive director, as you heard, of Friends Indeed since 2017, an amazing program. His wife, Francie, and their college-aged twins have been able to successfully provide supportive service to help struggling individuals meet basic human needs, so our homeless and at-risk neighbors can rebuild their lives, something I know today is going to be front and center with this board. Rabbi Grader, thank you for leading us in the invocation and for truly serving as a model citizen for the County of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been some time since we've been up here making these presentations, so we're a little rusty. Please bear with us. But I want to thank Rodolphe Andrade for leading us today in our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Andrade served in the United States Marine Corps from August 2022 to August 2010 to August 2022. The highest rank he held was E5 Sergeant, and his last unit was Delta Company 4th Tank Battalion. Some of his decorations include receiving the Navy Achievement Medal, the Iraq Conflict Medal, and the Global War on Terrorism. Mr. Andrade currently works for the Veterans Peer Access Network, known as VPAN, and it is there where he's gone on to help hundreds of veterans connect to important resources, employment, and housing. He is a resident of the 1st District and has been for the last 50 years. Mr. Andrade graduated from John Bosco Tech and went on to continue his education at East LA College. He is married and has 3 children. And it is with great pleasure that I present Rudolph Andrade with a certificate of appreciation and also a medal from our office. It's one of our coins, actually, that I think most of us have produced to give to you as well and your family. Thank you for your service and for your help for all of our veterans.
Thank you both for starting our meeting off. With that, we're going to move on to today's agenda. Executive Officer, please call the agenda.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's agenda will begin on page 2, public hearing items 1 through 5. On item 4, this item will be continued to January 31st, 2023 to meet legal requirements. The remaining items will be held for hearing. On page 5, consent calendar, Board of Supervisors, items 6 through 33. On item 6, Supervisor Hahn requests that this item be held. This includes an addition as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 9, Supervisor Solis requests that this item be held. This includes a revision as indicated on the...
Thank you both for starting our meeting off. With that, we're going to move on to today's agenda. Executive Officer, please call the agenda.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's agenda will begin on page 2, public hearing items 1 through 5. On item 4, this item will be continued to January 31st, 2023 to meet legal requirements. The remaining items will be held for hearing. On page 5, consent calendar, Board of Supervisors, items 6 through 33. On item 6, Supervisor Hahn requests that this item be held. This includes an addition as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 9, Supervisor Solis requests that this item be held. This includes a revision as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 10, Supervisor Solis requests that this item be held. On item 15, Supervisor Mitchell requests that this item be held. On item 20, Supervisor Hahn and Supervisor Mitchell would like to revise their joint motion to update recommendation number 1 to add a report back in writing before any agreements are executed with a detailed description of the step-down pilot program designed and an analysis of how the funding of the step-down pilot program fits within the global SB 823 spending plan. And recommendation number 2 to add consideration of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition and the Amity Foundation. On item 21, Supervisor Hahn and Supervisor Barger would like to revise their joint motion to also instruct the Director of Mental Health in collaboration with the above named departments to include in its 120-day report back an evaluation of whether sufficient state, federal, or departmental funding is available for care court implementation and ongoing operation, and if insufficient, the projected impacts and options to consider to bridge any funding gap. On item 22, Supervisor Hahn requests that this item be held. This includes a revision as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 26, this includes a revision as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 27, Supervisor Horvath requests that this item be continued to January 10th, 2023. This includes a revision as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 28, Supervisor Barger requests that this item be held. This includes a revision as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 29, Supervisor Barger requests that this item be held. On item 33, Supervisor Horvath would like to abstain from the vote. On page 32, administrative matters, items 34 through 64. On item 38, Supervisor Mitchell requests that this item be held. On item 51 and 52, Supervisor Hahn requests that these items be continued to January 10th, 2023. On item 54, during the December 6, 2022 meeting, the board continued this item to January 10, 2023. On page 55, this includes miscellaneous additions to the agenda that were posted more than 72 hours in advance of the meeting as indicated on the supplemental agenda. On item 62A, Supervisor Mitchell requests that this item be held. On page 56, separate matters, item 65. On item 65 is a recommendation to authorize this chief executive officer to execute a proposed 15-year lease with RR&C Crossroads No. 1 LLC for approximately 144,000 square feet of office and warehouse space and 785 on-site parking spaces located at 13401 Crossroads Parkway North in the City of Industry, and authorize the issuance of taxable commercial paper notes through the county's Capital Asset Leasing Corporation Lease Revenue Note Program in the amount not to exceed $21,025,000 for the county's tentative improvement costs. On page 58, special district agendas. This is the agenda for the Los Angeles County Development Authority. On item 3D, Supervisor. On page 61, notices of closed session. On item CS4, this is an addition as indicated on the supplemental agenda. The requests for continuances through CS4 are before you.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Mitchell and seconded by Supervisor Solis to approve these items, and that will be the order.
That completes the reading of the agenda, Madam Chair.
Okay, Madam Executive Officer, please play our code of conduct.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I please have your attention? The meeting of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors is about to commence. A code of conduct will now be read, and we request that you comply with it to ensure the efficient administration of the meeting. Members of the public, it is your right to participate in today's board hearing, and the board encourages such participation. However, the right of the public to address the board must be balanced with the need to ensure that public comment does not interfere with the orderly course of the board's business. All are reminded to abide by the following rules. Speakers must cease speaking immediately when their time has ended. Public comment on agenda items must relate to the subject matter of that item. General public comment is limited to subjects within the jurisdiction of the board. Public comment does not include the right to engage in a dialogue with board members or staff. Please remain respectful of the forum and refrain from uttering, writing, or displaying profane, personal, threatening, derogatory, demeaning, or other abusive statements toward the board, any member thereof, staff, or any other person. Members of the audience should be respectful of the views expressed by speakers, staff, and board members, and may not clap, cheer, whistle, or otherwise disrupt the orderly conduct of the meeting. Any person engaging in conduct that disrupts the meeting is subject to being removed from the board meeting. And finally, if you witness conduct or behavior by other members of the public that disrupts your ability to remain engaged or participate in this meeting, please notify the Sergeant at Arms or other county staff. Thank you for your cooperation.
Okay, so here is how we're going to do this. We're going to begin with our public hearing items, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Then we're going to take up item 22, followed by items 6, 9, 10, then 15, 28, 29, 38, 62A, which were held by supervisors, and then we'll end with remaining items not held by the board and general public comment. Now, we are expecting the mayor, Ms. Bass, to be here to speak to our item 22. So respecting her schedule, when she gets here, if it's okay, we will pause wherever we are with the public hearings, and we ask the public to, bear with us a little bit if you're waiting on hold to talk on one of these public hearing items, just know that we're going to take a pause and we'll take up item 22 with the mayor here. So I'm just going to try to accommodate her time when she gets here. Got it? Okay, let's begin with public hearing item 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Before I'm going to explain the speaking rules, Madam Chair. For members of the public wishing to participate remotely, as indicated on the agenda, please call 877-226-8163 and use participant code number 1336503. Members of the public participating remotely in the boardroom, you will have the opportunity to address the board throughout the meeting. You will receive 1 minute to address the board on items held by the supervisors and up to a total of 3 minutes on all remaining items in general public comment for a total of 6 minutes for this meeting. Please monitor your time and the items you are signing up for, as your name will not be called once your time has elapsed. In addition, you will receive up to 1 minute to address the board on each of the public hearing items. For members of the public joining us remotely, when the board moves to the item you wish to address, promptly press 1, then 0 to be entered into the speaking queue. Please remember to turn down the volume on your devices as soon as the moderator calls on you, or there will be an echo. You will need to press 1, then 0 for each item on which you would like to speak on. To ensure we hear from both in-person and telephonic speakers, we will alternate between the 2 speaking queues. Members of the public who are in attendance, when you hear or see your name displayed on the screen, please come down to the front of the boardroom and staff will assist you. Please do not approach the podium until you're directed to do so. We will begin by calling in-person speakers when they're coming forward, taking public comment.
Madam Executive Officer, do you please swear in the members of the public who are requesting to address the board on the public hearing items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please stand and raise your right hand. In the testimony you may give before this board, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Okay, we will now move on to item 1, hearing on the annexation and levying of assessments for county lighting districts in the unincorporated areas of Avocado Heights and Castaic. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1, then 0 now to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 1 is a hearing on the annexation of tentative subdivision projects known as tract number 83168 and 72680 within the unincorporated areas of Avocado Heights and Castaic to County Lighting Maintenance District 1687 and County Lighting District Landscaping and Lighting Act 1, unincorporated zone. A written departmental statement was provided and no correspondence was received.
Are there any supervisors that have comments on this item? Okay, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who signed up to speak on item 1.
Will the following individual please come forward? Anthony Garcia. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first speaker is Eric Previn. You may begin.
Thank you. I was just reviewing this item right now. This is another annexation item. So you'll take a small contribution, an assessment from all the parties, and fund some of this lighting stuff. Interesting idea. I just hope that you're feeling okay, Supervisor Hahn. You sound like you have a stuffy nose. I hope everybody stays healthy, and we'll get on to item number 3. But let's make sure that these public hearing items there's no community protest on this one. So good work.
Thank you, Mr. Previn. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other participants in the queue to address the board.
And do we have any members of the public that are here on item 1? Okay, it would be appropriate then to close the public hearing, tabulate the ballots, and table the item until later in the meeting for the results and action by this board. And that will be the order. We'll now move to item 2, hearing on the annexation and levying of assessments for county lighting districts in the city of Carson. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 and 0 now to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 2 is a hearing of the annexation of subdivision territory known as Project Number 32-37A in the City of Carson to County Lighting Maintenance District 1697 and County Lighting District Landscaping and Lighting Act 1 Carson Zone. A written departmental statement was provided and no correspondence was received.
Are there any supervisors that would like to make remarks? Supervisor Mitchell, did you want to make any remarks on this? Okay. Then Executive Officer, please call those members of the public who have signed up to speak on this item.
Will the following individual please come forward? Anthony Garcia. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Madam Chair, we have no participants in queue to address the board.
Okay, are there any members here in the audience that would like to address us on this item? Okay, then it would be appropriate to close the public hearing, direct the tabulation of the ballots, and table this item until later in the meeting for tabulation results and action by this board, and that will be the order. I believe this is perfect timing. Good morning. That was perfect timing, Madam Mayor. Your timing has been perfect since the day you got elected, but this was absolutely perfect. So I really, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome our new mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Many of us have known Karen for a long time. I had the pleasure of serving in Congress with Ms. Bass. Our offices were right next to each other in the Cannon office building, and Karen and I were both in the freshman class that year. And there was about 9 of us in that class, and so we were kind of a very close group of members of Congress. So it's great to have you back in Los Angeles. Last week, I joined Mayor Bass at the city's Emergency Operations Center as she signed a state of emergency declaration on homelessness for the city of Los Angeles. She spoke about her commitment to finally treating the homelessness crisis like we would any other crisis that displaces tens of thousands of people from their homes. Like we would see if there was an earthquake or a hurricane or a fire. All of us know that in those events, we would be moving heaven and earth with all hands on deck to make sure that people got the resources and the roof over their heads that they need. Over the weekend, she unveiled her Inside Safe proposal, a plan that doubles down on strategies that we know work: hotel and motel conversions and master leasing. This is an approach that we've done here in the county, and my office has been doing successfully since 2019. And we saw by far the most successful housing strategy were the Project Room Key and the Project Home Key during the pandemic. I think I share a feeling that many people in LA are experiencing right now, Madam Mayor, and that's a new sense of hope. I know my colleague Supervisor Barger always uses that word when she sees you or hears you. And not because any of these policies are a silver bullet that can magically solve homelessness, but because Mayor Bass's mindset and determination are bringing a renewed vigor to a battle that we've all been fighting way too long. And we know this is not the City of LA's problem to solve alone. And that is why I particularly appreciate you, Mayor Bass, saying we need to link arms rather than point fingers. I think it's important that the county be the city's partner in this new effort. And that leads us to the motion that I have before us today, along with my co-author, Supervisor Barger, to support Los Angeles City's emergency declaration and your new efforts to address this homelessness crisis. Our motion would do two things. One, we would send representatives from the Department of Health Services, Public Social Services, Public Health, and Mental Health to join you, Mayor Bass, and your city leadership as you work to implement the state of emergency and the Inside Safe program. We want to be at the table, we need to be at the table, and we know what is needed and how we can help. And two, it would make sure county staff can partner with the city's outreach teams to make sure that anyone you're helping in encampments or who you are moving into motels or hotels can get access to mental health care, drug addiction services, Medi-Cal, general leave, or any other service that we in the county can provide. Well, I guess it's another thing. Lastly, we're going to have our Director of Homeless Initiative, Sherry Todoroff, to make sure that the directives that I just mentioned are implemented and report back to this board in 60 days and 180 days on their progress and any needs that they might have to support you. Since your announcement last week, Mayor, I know my colleagues and I have heard from other cities who are a little bit concerned that this might mean taking away resources from them. But I'm going to push back a little bit on that idea because I want to make it clear the majority of people experiencing homelessness are in the city of Los Angeles. Out of the nearly 70,000 people that are homeless in LA County, 42,000 are living in the city of Los Angeles. That's then less than 30,000 in the rest of the 87 cities. And I know Supervisor Solis now feels this even more because she has all of Skid Row in her supervisorial district. And we know that is ground zero for this problem. But I know, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I've told every one of my cities, if they step up to the plate, and if they build a shelter, or they want to build affordable housing, or they want to convert a motel for some encampments, I am there to help them with county services. So we're doing that. Your emergency declaration just means we are really going to put all hands on deck to help the city of Los Angeles. Thank you to Supervisor Barger for recommending that we include language in this motion stating that if any of those other cities in the county declare a state of emergency, we will be with you side by side to support your efforts. In fact, I hope this is just the beginning. I hope when we see the progress in the city of LA, we will see more cities in all of our areas, colleagues, step up and agree to do more to solve this problem. I know that Mayor Bass wants to embed someone from the county into the city's incident command, and I think this is a great idea. And then I would like to read in the following for this motion saying, appoint the CEO or a designee to be the second deputy incident commander in the city of Los Angeles Incident Command and at the city's emergency operations centers. I think that puts us squarely in your corner together so that we can really begin making a difference. Colleagues, I hope you support this motion. I don't know where you stand on it. I thought if it was okay with you, we would let the mayor now present her state of emergency case to us. And then each of you, after she speaks, I would love for you to talk to her, ask questions, and we'll start with Supervisor Barger, who is the co-author.
Well, I'd be happy to yield to the mayor, and then I will speak after that.
Okay,
That's okay.
Great. Mayor Bass, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. I'm very excited about this because I think it sends a very important signal, just like the signal from last morning when you were there, when we signed the order putting Los Angeles in a state of emergency. I think it's a new day in our city, and I'm just so excited because each one of you have done significant work in your district regarding the unhoused. And to have a partnership where we have locked arms between the city and the county, I think it sends a great message, not just here, but in other cities as well. And you might have noticed that President Biden issued a declaration around homelessness as well. We want to make sure that we have a total alignment of every part of the government and of course the private sector in order to address this problem. So Madam President, thank you for your motion and thank you for joining me last week as I issued the Declaration on Homelessness. Supervisor Solis, I want to thank you for standing with me as I signed the executive directive that would dramatically accelerate and lower the cost of building affordable housing and temporary housing. And I'm sure you have all talked to developers and community-based organizations. As a matter of fact, where we held the press conference was a piece of property where a community organization had been trying to stand up 49 units of affordable housing for 16 years. It took them. And so the executive directive basically says, in a time certain, the developer will know exactly when plans will be approved and the process will be moved on. So I want to thank every member of the board for engaging with me in such a welcoming and productive way as I hit the ground running to address this crisis. We all know that every night in the city of Los Angeles, 40,000 people go to sleep unhoused, and more than 60,000 in the county. And every day, 5 people do not wake up. We all know this is a humanitarian crisis. We all know this is a life and death crisis. And it is a crisis that pays no heed to jurisdictional lines. So it is a crisis that requires all levels of government to come together. So it is with great hope that I urge the board to approve President Han's motion to lock arms with the City of Los Angeles and our new emergency approach to homelessness to ensure our efforts to bring people inside are matched with your experts and resources in healthcare, mental health, substance abuse, public health, and other social services, because we all know getting people housed is the #1 priority, but on day one you get them housed and on day one they have services. That's the only way for it to be successful. It is the only effective approach to this crisis, is one that is unified and comprehensive, and is only possible with a deep partnership between the city and the county that would represent a new direction and a new hope for Los Angeles and the unincorporated communities and the 87 other cities in the county. In signing my emergency declaration on homelessness, I also activated the city's Emergency Operations Center to break City Hall away from its traditional approach that is focused on process and to replace it with a new approach focused on solutions, results, and speed. Embedding county staff in the Emergency Operations Center and alongside city departments will dramatically accelerate and enhance our work to save lives at a true inflection point in Los Angeles. When we launch Inside Safe, it'll be an opportunity to basically take lessons learned from the pandemic. Novel approach. We do have hotels and motels that learned from that experience and now are willing to do master leasing. As a matter of fact, we have calls from a number of people who want to offer either apartment buildings, hotels, or motels, and we need to take advantage of that. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I so look forward to working with you, because the only way we can really solve this is if we are working in complete partnership. And I will tell you, since I declared the state of emergency, a number of other cities, some in California and some in other states, are calling and looking at what we're doing. And so I think we have an opportunity to show a new way to go about this. And I want to just take a minute and acknowledge our Chief of Housing and Homelessness Solutions, Mercedes Marquez. Some of you might know her from her work, long-time work with the city, the county, and also as one of the assistant secretaries in HUD. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bass. Okay, I'll start with my co-author, Supervisor Barger, then I see Supervisor Solis, you're on the queue, and then I'm sure my colleagues over here will want to say something.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing this forward. Nothing made me happier than watching that press conference last week, and the people that you had around you, and to have you as part of that. It is about, we're all in this together. None of us are going to solve it alone. And I really thank you, Mayor Bass, for using your voice to bring together all 88 cities. And as you said when you were sworn in, it is about working together. Homelessness doesn't know boundaries. It's happening throughout our county. And clearly, LA City has the lion's share of the homeless, but it's not a one-size-fits-all item within the city of LA. So I think it's important for us to recognize and share the fact this is a humanitarian crisis that truly is in need of an emergency order. And it's something that I know Supervisor Solis and I brought in a motion for the Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness, because we recognized that while we were using Measure H dollars, we needed to rethink and look at what are we doing well and where do we need to pivot. And the commission that we put together was charged with a number of items, but the key part of the commission was to embrace inclusivity and help the county do better when it comes to working alongside municipal partners to fight against homelessness. Working alongside municipal partners, again, something that you have pledged. We were able to hear from all 88 cities in the region, and there was no doubt that many view homelessness the same way we do, as an absolute emergency, which requires an emergency-like response. And I tell people, we're not going to solve it in 1 year, but we are going to work together to get the most vulnerable off the street. So that, is why Sheree Tartaroff and her team at the CEO Homeless Initiative have charged with continuing that collaboration, supporting our city's daily efforts. And I want to thank you publicly for the work that you're doing. Fezia and Sheree, I want to thank you, but I also want you to know that this board is going to work collaboratively with you to make sure that we are transparent, but we also are all hands on deck with all of our departments, because homelessness touches every department in the county, from our parks to children and family services, many of which, these children do not need to be in our system if not for being unhoused. So we're going to have to work together. And I also want to acknowledge Matt Szabo and his team at the City of Los Angeles, who have been implementing the 7th Birch recommendation, which establishes an executive-level action. So I'd like to thank him and the city for their collaboration on that front, taking the Birch report and actually looking at that. I know that the Homeless Initiative team has met with our cities on Measure H, taken feedback on the county response to homelessness services, and has been providing some guidance and assistance on key housing opportunities like Project Home Key. And speaking of housing opportunities, Mayor Bass, I want to touch upon one of the things you mentioned in your inaugural speech about streamlining the city's review of new housing projects. The region is facing a critical housing shortage, and both the county and the city need to take significant action to help remove unnecessary hurdles to building new housing. So while the city stepped up, we, the county, have to as well. It's not only the cause of the surge in homelessness that we are seeing countywide, but the regional housing shortage is still a significant factor in this discussion, and one area where we have the ability to make a quick turnaround. Again, bravo to you. I will lead an initiative to streamline the county's permitting and entitlement process for all development, especially for housing. This initiative, led by the county, to bring in a consultant to perform an in-depth analysis into the areas where the county's current systems are failing to meet the mark. I was just briefed on the findings in the draft report and anticipate the final draft will be ready in early January. This is something the board had asked for, and so we're waiting for that report to come. And at that time, I plan to bring in a motion to implement critical recommendations. We have an obligation as well to do what's right. These recommendations will focus on increasing transparency, defining and tracking performance metrics, improving usability of our technological systems, and expand the concept of express permits to services to minimize delays. Process and bureaucracy can no longer stand in the way of necessity. We have to meet the urgency of this moment, and I share your resolve in tackling the issues on all fronts. Thank you for the time to address this, Madam Chair. I just want you to know, I keep saying hope, and I do have hope, because we're all speaking the same language, talking about what we need to do, no longer pointing the finger saying it's your problem. This is our problem. So thank you, Bass, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my entire board, because we really are committed as a board to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for recognizing me along with Supervisor Barter for presenting this motion. It couldn't be more timely. And I want to again congratulate you publicly, Mayor Karen Bass, and also for the appointment of your new deputy who's going to be in charge of housing for the homeless. Some of us know you from many, many years, and we're delighted. But we've known Karen Bass, our friend, for many years as well. And I had the opportunity to serve with you when you were in the House and I was a cabinet secretary. And under that time that I saw you demonstrating your leadership in many, many capacities with our speaker at that time, Nancy Pelosi, but also with the top leaders, and how you did it with grace and talent. And we say in Spanish, ganas. The quiet movement, but the urge that you have moving you, right? I want to thank you for all that you've done. You have undoubtedly set a different pace for the city and the county. You are one of the most popular elected officials right now. And that, I think, is tantamount to saying now's the time to push to get those things done. And if everyone believes that you have the ability and talent, and as I do, I think other people do, then this is a time for all of us to kind of lockstep and continue to work with you. And I want to especially thank you for, even before you decided to run for mayor, you came out to visit our village, our care village out on Bigness Street. That was supposed to be a staging area for our our jail, Men's Central Jail. You came, you were a congresswoman, and it wasn't even your district, but you came to see what we were unveiling. And I have to give a shout out to our county departments, Public Works, all of our partners. But we were able to put together a project in 6 months, record time, and cut the cost. We weren't talking about paying $550,000 per unit. We were able to bring that down to half of that, almost half. But I want to say that those are the kinds of things that I know you take seriously, and I know through your own commissioners that you've appointed, your task force, that they're bringing those ideas to you, one of which I know Sarah DeSalt brought to you. And I thank her because she was there to help us, to help me in designing and helping to bring that project to fruition. But I have, as you know, an urgency now because I cover all of Skid Row. And we spent a lot of time there, and we're going to continue to spend time with you to work with our Department of Mental Health, DHS, and our other stakeholders. Many want to do street medicine and get it done now. And I think we can work together with the state to try to draw down more money so that some of these providers can actually get paid for doing the street work that they've been doing anyway, but at a higher rate. And I think that those are some tools that we can talk about and try to get our legislative friends in Sacramento as well as the federal government to help us with those reimbursements. I know that the voters in Los Angeles also overwhelmingly passed your new initiative, which is going to help, I think, many of the unhoused. The United to House LA initiative, which is going to be billions of dollars. But I know with that come challenges and restrictions in terms of how that can be used. So one of the questions that I would want to ask you is, how can we as a county work with you? Because I know some of that money will go towards actual development and service. So if we're in the business of doing service, how can the county then interject itself so that we can work with you and hopefully receive, this assistance as well to keep it going? Just your brief thoughts on that, Madam
Madam Mayor.
Sure, I think we are both examining ULA and to see how the money can be used. And you're absolutely correct in saying it's quite prescriptive, but there also might be some flexibility in there as well. And so we're looking at that. I would suggest that we get our teams together and examine, because it absolutely has to be connected like everything else.
And Madam Chair, I know that, just a few more questions. We're looking at expanding the village that you saw in Bigness, and there are properties there that are owned by Metro, as well as discussions that we're having with our own CEO property management to see how we can acquire more property, but it's in the city's jurisdiction. So I'm wondering if that might be something we can continue to discuss and see how rapidly we can get these units up, but to become permanent.
Well, and I think what you have done with the village is a perfect example that it can be done. You don't have to wait 16 years.
Absolutely.
You can get it done. And I think at this point, I don't even know how many people I've taken there. I took our majority whip, Jim Clyburn, Secretary Marcia Fudge, Cedric Richmond when he was representing the White House, because I think it's a model to show, and especially the speed in which it was done.
And I look forward to working with you and our president, Joe Biden, who I know just released his own initiative, so hopefully we can collaborate with our teams back there and get the funding that LA County and the city deserve. And just one last thing, I know that you've heard about General Hospital.
Yes.
Flagship, where you worked.
That's right.
Years.
In the emergency room.
I know how important that structure has been to so many lives, especially our impoverished and indigent people. But now we're looking at a hope to reimagine it as a place where we could provide up to 500 to 600 or maybe more units of housing. An RFP is going out next year, and we're hoping that we can collaborate again with the city, because it is in the city's jurisdiction, to see how we can offset some of those costs. We've already drawn down about 150 million. We're looking for the governor's involvement. I'm hoping that we can try to convince also the federal government, but also through the unique funding sources that you have to collaborate in any way we can. Any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I think it would be a great, especially since President Biden came forward with his initiative, that we go as the city and the county to the administration and say, you know, and present to them ways that they could work with us. Because if he wants to reduce homelessness by 25%, making a huge dent in LA will help him get there, since we're the epicenter for the country. And one of the things that I expressed to them is that we can always use money, of course, but we also need regulatory relief. Because, you know, for example, your mental health village, where you had to build 4 separate buildings because of a 50-year-old regulation that was meant to deinstitutionalize, but in today's environment makes no sense. And so raising that, I talked to Secretary Becerra about it as well, and said, and we need to bring these people here so that they can see you're not going to meet the president's goals if you don't address the social services, the health, the drug treatment, mental health. If you don't address it comprehensively, then he won't succeed. We want him to succeed by us succeeding.
Thank you again, and what an honor and pleasure to have both of you here, and look forward to working with you every single day. Thank you.
Likewise.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Horvath, with your public queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for being here with us today. We appreciate your partnership right up from the start. I know you and I had the pleasure of being out over these past many months talking with folks, and as we were doing that together, you spoke very clearly about working hand in glove with the county, and here you are living up to your word, and I'm really grateful for that, and I know the people of Los Angeles are as well. I'm glad to see that we're going to be moving forward on a variety of different issues, because the truth is we have to work together to solve our homelessness crisis, city and county. I know that you're doing all that you can in this moment to step up and meet it, and that is very clear with the action that you have taken to help our unhoused people on the streets, and also accelerate how quickly housing options are going to be developed. I had a couple of questions and then comments about sort of what our next steps could look like, but in your exploration of the emergency order, I know you've been very clear in your focus on land use regulation and eliminating some of those roadblocks that have come into place and delays that have been that we've witnessed in terms of developing housing. Have you seen your ability to have more flexibility in spending or in hiring practices or to de-silo within City Hall and Los Angeles regulation how services and departments can work together better under this emergency order?
That's an excellent question because it's going to take all of that. So we just started meeting on that same day that I declared the state of emergency. I met with all the general managers. We've had 2 meetings so far because really, I mean, just about every single department touches on the issue. I mean, the general public wouldn't think about the library department, for example, but it's a big issue in libraries. And so bringing everybody forward and asking them within a certain number of days for them to get back to us, to tell us what are the obstacles, what are the roadblocks, how can we help you get to yes? And so we're exploring that. And what I have found is that the minute we sent that signal, people are very willing and very open and forthcoming and coming and telling us, well, we think we can do it this way. So it makes me very, very hopeful that we will be able to streamline a lot and that we'll be able to assist the general managers in addressing some of the roadblocks. And then one of the things I discovered along the way, I don't know if the county is suffering with this the way the city is, but we have thousands of vacancies. And how do we get people hired quickly? I mean, for example, there's several hundred vacancies in sanitation. Now, as we set to move people from encampments into motels, we need sanitation there to assist. So, on the bright side, even though we have the vacancies now, the bright side is those are good paying jobs. And we have to think about this issue in the whole spectrum because the majority of people that are unhoused can get their lives together, address whatever the issues are, and join the workforce for those that are not working. And we have a job for them.
Absolutely. You share my thinking on this subject as it relates to the county and also causes for concern or causes me to think about the possibility of us to support what you're doing in your leadership to declare our own state of emergency here in the county, to be in partnership with you, to have that loosening and regulation, to have that cooperation and partnership, and to make sure that we're addressing those very issues also on our side to make sure that we're not sort of the roadblock to making sure that there is progress. I support this item as it's been proposed today, and I'm glad that we're talking about the inclusion of other cities as well. That's very important. There are other cities who are struggling, though I would say that not all of our cities are struggling the same. And so I want to make sure if we are acknowledging to other cities that we are open to supporting them, that we are doing so in an equitable way. And by that, I mean focusing on where our greatest need is, so we can prioritize that over just sort of saying, well, every city within Los Angeles and the unincorporated areas all be treated exactly the same. We've seen how painting with a broad brush can, create duplicative services or delete resources that could be better used in other places. And in a declaration on our county side of the aisle, I hope that our chair, our council, our CEO can work together in helping the county declare our own order to create meaningful power and expediency in terms of how we can support the mayor and the city in de-siloing our own efforts. For example, in terms of spending like the MHSA funds. We know we have more than $1 billion in reserves, but due to restrictions, we've had trouble spending that funding. That funding would be an invaluable resource to help make sure that the services that the people who will be housed in Los Angeles and other cities can actually be cared for. Can we get flexibility in our hiring practices and civil service hiring rules or incentives to give student loan relief or hiring bonuses to compete with other providers? As we've seen, we've had challenges in filling vacancies in our workforce, specifically in our Department of Mental Health, and making sure that they have what they need in terms of their outreach teams, community-based organizations, our encountering similar challenges, so I'd like to explore how a declaration could address those concerns, and making sure that our Mental Health Services Act funds actually meet the people where they are and serve people that need our help the most. So exploring a declaration could give us the flexibility we need to do exactly that. I believe our board can also meet our new mayor halfway by making a decision soon on the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendation regarding leadership all over the County of Los Angeles and our homeless resources and operations. I know our homelessness initiative director is already working on this type of coordination, and I'm ready to see that oversight role held by the homelessness initiative. And finally, we need a plan to, as I know the City of Los Angeles just had its success with Measure ULA, we need to make sure that we continue to have a funding source for the work that Measure H has made possible to continue making sure that the services and support that meet those folks who need our help are continue to be funded. We know 85,000 people have been permanently housed and more than 115,000 have been placed in some form of interim housing thanks to those funds. We need to continue that success and partner with the City of Los Angeles. And in order to do that, we need to have the
letting us know about the amendment to the motion that would be supportive of any city declaring state of emergency. While I don't have any cities that I know of imminently looking at this. I just want to say that we are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And how can we get this person's information about the motel in the Harbor Gateway?
We have his contact.
We have his contact? Okay. Thank you. All right, next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Stephen Simon. You may begin.
Good morning, Chair Hahn, and good morning, Supervisors. I'm Stephen Simon, the Interim Executive Director of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. Sorry I couldn't be with you in person this morning, but I certainly wanted to express that LAHSA is looking forward to working with the county, the city, and community providers to fully support the emergency declaration and the Inside Safe initiative, and the full spectrum of housing and services needed countywide to house our unsheltered neighbors. This certainly includes addressing the inequities in the current system. We'll continue to work with the County Homeless Initiative and the Mayor's Chief of Housing and Homelessness to redouble our system support efforts from shelters to permanent supportive housing. So I want to thank you all again for your leadership and say that LAHSA is here to fully committed to supporting your combined efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Eric Previn. You may begin.
Thank you, Eric Previn, and I must say, what a pageant of the wonderful. I mean, we have found one another. We found ourselves. What a beautiful rollout to another approach, and I look forward.
Our next participant is Rodeo Orca. You may begin.
You are in queue.
Rodeo, yeah, last name O-R-C-E. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Rocio Ortiz. My name, I am from District 2. I need extension for inquilinos, please. Salvador Gamboa is a lot of problem for me. My mom now is in hospital. I need extension.
I think you're, excuse me, I think you're on the wrong item. I think you said 62A, and that's a little bit later in the agenda. So right now we're taking comments on item 22.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Vamsi Kotla. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Vamsi Kotla. Congratulations to Mayor Bass. It's an honor to speak in front of you and the entire Board of Supervisors. We are the legal coalition that is advocating for affordability, equity, and sustainability in housing through public-private partnerships and technology. We recently organized a Region 2022 event, the SoFi Stadium, with opening remarks from Mayor Giuseppe and participation from Sacramento government officials and the Lincoln Institute. We presented our findings in person to California Strategic Growth Council in Sacramento last Thursday and got a great response from Secretary Castro Ramirez, Director of SEPA, and others. What Mayor Bass is doing to fast-track projects and decrease regulation is a critical step but please note that as much as 40% of permits expired between 2020 to 2021. This is as per LATG's own data on ADUs. A predominant reason for this is construction has gotten too expensive and it's hard to find enough construction workers. Larger concession can solve this problem. Some of the issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Zeke Sandoval. You may begin.
Good morning. This is Zeke Sandoval on behalf of PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, in enthusiastic support. We extend our sincerest gratitude to Chair Hahn and Supervisor Barger for this motion and pledge our steadfast partnership in this joint effort to end the homelessness crisis. PATH was founded in the city of Los Angeles in the early 80s, and for almost 40 years, we've done our best to bridge the gaps between the city and the county. And as one of the largest nonprofit homeless service providers in the region, we're grateful for our partnerships with the many other cities and COGs in the county, because homelessness isn't confined to just one city. But as the biggest city in the county and the epicenter of the crisis, Los Angeles has a special responsibility to lead here. That's why we were proud to stand beside Mayor Bass last week when she declared the state of emergency, and why we're deeply, deeply thankful to Chair Hahn's presence and leadership. True partnership can make a world of difference. We look forward to working in close collaboration with all your offices to solve this crisis together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Okay, as I pointed out before, this entire project is totally and ridiculously underfunded as per the county's endeavor, and as Rowland Heights has suffered thereof, and the interventions, and to fail to break out the different categories of, quote, homelessness to, well, we have this transient population, as pointed out in the Fullerton Road area here in Rowland Heights, so forth. It's absurd. You need to get out there, and this unhoused, it just doesn't fit what is actually out there in reality, and start dealing with the things that we have to deal with, and that actually you're dealing with, but failed to want to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in queue to address the board.
Okay, Genevieve, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear her. No, we still can't hear you.
Okay. Is that better? Oui? Oui. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm totally in support of this motion, but I think you're going to have to look at certain points. This morning, I didn't hear nothing about preventing homelessness, and that should be one thing to talk about it also. And the idea of putting people in motel and so on, you really need to look what's going on in those motels, because on a room key, I talked to 2 women who had been placed in those motels, and for me, they left the motel because they felt safer in the street. That's very scary. And many complained that in those motels, there was a lot of use of drugs and sexual issue and so on. So I think the idea is great. I hear nothing about preventing homelessness, and that should be one thing to talk about it also. And the idea of putting people in motel and so on, you really need to look what's going on in those motels, because on a room key, I talked to 2 women who had been placed in those motels, and told me they left the motel because they felt safer in the street. That's very scary. And many complained that in those motels, there was a lot of use of drug and sexual issue and so on. So I think the idea is great. Talks are cheap, but I think really look how it is implemented. And
first of all, thank you for doing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. We can't, something about these mics. Am I controlling it?
Okay, is it on?
Okay, now it is. Go ahead.
Alright, so this is related to county support to Karen Bass's homelessness emergency. So basically, this whole state of emergency is basically going to be used for her to not solve the problem. She's just going to, initiate violent sweeps of unhoused people and cause it, and she's not going to get them housing or services. She's just going to, move them over to the next block, take a picture and say she solved the problem, and then, and then they'll still be out on the street. And there'll be no housing and services for them. The whole motion was passed during an illegitimate meeting of the city council. The whole emergency declaration was approved. This was, rushed through. They let Kevin De Leon vote on it, even though he's racist and needs to resign. Then Karen Bass was taking pictures with his supporters later. This whole thing is...
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, so I've been here last decade speaking on black service providers. We get nothing but pushback. Last time I was here, Gomez, who's your homeless deputy, Holly Mitchell. We asked for a letter of support from HUD to return back the $150 million, at least to start with homeless services. Funding is not an option. But what I don't appreciate is the disrespect of your staff members. Mellow Desire is no longer in existence. You disrespected her under Mark Ridley Thomas. You allowed Mary Conway Wickham.
Okay, make sure you speak to this item. Make sure you speak to this item.
I am Janice Hahn. Okay. And Long Beach, the A board, where we applied for contracting there too, black service providers need a chance too for these contracts. So I'm on the state of emergency. You declared it in 2015 with Garcetti, and still nothing is done. What I'm saying is that when we leave behind these doors and we apply for these contracts, don't disrespect us behind the scenes. All that black girl magic means nothing. Action speaks louder than words. Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to you too. Next speaker, please.
Hi. Excuse me. Hi, this is Pastor Deborah Purnell.
Hi, can you put the mic down a little bit so right in front of your mouth? There you go. Perfect.
Hi.
Go ahead.
This is Pastor Deborah Purnell, and I just want to speak briefly as far as the homeless situation on the accountability from the workers. I have approached several of these agencies like hospice, agencies that return hundreds of millions of dollars that they did not use for the people. And I think the accountability could be on the level of military. When military recruiters, they have so many people they have to recruit a month. And if the accountabilities of these workers, if they had to house so many people, whatever that number is, a month, they had to go out on the street so many days out the month, they had to meet these people, take pictures of these people, talk about the progress of these people, then you'd have a lot more people housed. So that's one problem. Another problem is judges who are counterproductive, who are still putting people out on the street when you have moratoriums and other things of that nature to try to slow the homeless situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, $8.1 billion, will it solve the homeless crisis that we've encountered for the last 15 years? And it's going to take only 12 years for Karen Bass to solve this major crisis, this historic problem of programmatic homelessness? I doubt it. Because under bid document project number HIP 0174 for the record, public health, there has been no instructive executive director to address the issue of what creates homelessness. When you don't provide the HUD assistance, when you don't provide the scope of work to finish and complete something so simple, but you rather find us out in the street homeless because we can't afford a roof over our head. So for the record, I'm submitting all these documents, and all I want is help. If I can't get help, promise you next year it's all about a war.
Okay, thank you. Please, who's taking his documents? Okay, great. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Robert Lovelace. I'm a representative of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I'm here to express our tremendous support for the actions that you're taking today. This is the entire world is watching Los Angeles right now. How we respond to this crisis is the test of our lifetimes. We couldn't be happier with the tools that we have before us. And I only wish that in this electronic age, people could sense the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm that was in this room.
Yes.
We support you. The carpenters are ready to build. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you to our carpenters. Next speaker, please.
Mike Greenspan. Wow. Hilda Solis, Karen Bass, Janice Hahn, we're having a Democratic Congressional Caucus. The only one missing is Corrine Brown. Oops, she's in prison. Well, one thing that has definitely happened all around LA, you look at it downtown, you look at it on these transit corridors, we're building luxury apartments. Well, I keep saying to anybody who cares to listen, someone's not going to go from being homeless on the street to one of our luxury apartments. That just doesn't work. Gone are the old red, white, and blue wooden signs from Federal HUD when they used to build public housing. That money's been pocketed. Now, one good thing, at least Caruso didn't get elected. Oh yeah, all those wonderful promises, he'd build 30,000. Well, you know, Rick Caruso would do nothing but jerk his dick. That's all he...
All right. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Salam Alam. I really appreciate you. I wish the mayor was here, but she's gone. Okay. I really appreciate each one of you for your united efforts in addressing this homelessness issue and mental health, especially Supervisor Holly Mitchell, which I have been working from your office staff, even when you were state professor. I never met you in person. Some of you have been working really hard. Thank you very much. But there is a lot of room for improvements, like the commissioner meeting for the mental health department. That meeting should be announced. It shouldn't be secret. Nobody knew. Somehow I found out. So yeah, they taking in charge, something like that. Customer service should be issue. And those people, those agencies take money.
Thank you.
Who don't address it, they need to be also held accountable. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your involvement. Next speaker, please.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
Sachs. Thank you very much. I'd just like to point out, you have a state of emergency declared on homelessness. But down below, you have the instructing executive director of the Homeless Initiative to ensure homeless initiative funding is made available. So I'm just curious because on page 65 of your agenda, A4, discussion and necessary action relating to the county's homeless crisis in 2017. Didn't you have 15,000 homeless people signed up about 2012? You had 15,000 people signed up because of Obamacare? What happened to the $660 million that you were supposed to spend on Obamacare? Where the fuck did that money end up going? Janice, do you know about that?
Thank you for telling me. Next speaker, please.
Those are all the speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay, so hearing no other comments, colleagues, this item is before us as amended. And I will move, seconded by Supervisor Barger, to approve item 22. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 22 as amended is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Great day. Okay, now we're going to go back to item 3 of the public hearing. And thank you for everybody's patience as we took up this very important motion. But now we'll go back to our public hearing. Item 3, the hearing on operating memorandum between the county and the Performing Arts Center. For members of the public on the telephone, press 10 now, and thanks for waiting, to comment on this item. Executive Officer, please read in the short title.
Item 3 is a hearing on an operating memoranda by and between the county and the Performing Arts Center of Los Angeles.
You're innocent or not. That's one of the things, like I said, that's a big thing to me because Humphreys, the city of Los Angeles, said right to due process. So I believe they should have it read, Chief Hunt. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers here in the room? Seeing none. Colleagues, so you are in queue. Appointing some commissioners on committees of special districts, and again, and Eleanor Montano will be moving on to be our emeritus member of that commission. I'll move this, seconded by Supervisor Solis, to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 6 is before you. Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Mitchell. Aye. Supervisor Mitchell. Aye. Supervisor Horvath. Supervisor Horvath. Aye. Supervisor Barger. Aye. Supervisor Barger. Aye. Supervisor Hahn. Supervisor Hahn. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Colleagues, we're going on to item 9, the phase out of pepper spray at Central Juvenile Hall, which is held by Supervisor Solis. And for members of the public on the telephone, press 10 now. Comment on this item 9. Supervisor Solis, would you like to lead this off?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I also want to thank Supervisor Horvath for also co-authoring this very important motion. You know, there are times when we have to put forward motions, but I can't think of how upsetting it is that we even have to do this today. But this action, I think, begs the question. We have to do something. The motion is one of those motions that I believe we have to take action. The motion directs the probation department to stop using OC spray on our youth, but more specifically, as the Probation Oversight Commission's report on OC spray, it showed to stop using OC spray on youth with developmental disabilities and girls and gender-expansive youth. This isn't a new item for us. It's something that we know this board has addressed before. Previously, back in 2019, that was almost 4 years ago when this was brought up. And we had a different board at the time, but I think we were unanimous in our decision that we knew this had to stop. The board stood up for our youth who were incarcerated and said we didn't want to see any more use of it. We agreed with probation's request for a phase-out, which came with training of staff, supposedly on de-escalation tactics. However, 4 years later now, we're not seeing an overall decrease in the use of OC spray. In fact, we're seeing an increase. And I want to thank our oversight entities like the PLC and OIG who flagged the concerning use of OC spray to the board. In 2019, the board took action after an OIG report, and now I'm asking our colleagues that we take similar action after I have read, and I hope some of you have read or your staff has the POC report. Just within the reporting period from June to September of this year, the use of OC spray at Central Juvenile Hall doubled. Of the 232 OC spray deployments, 157 were deployed at Central Juvenile Hall, whereas 75 were deployed at Barry J. Norda, despite the lower population of incarcerated youth at Central. Of the OC spray deployments at Central, 60% of them occurred in housing units where girls were categorized as emotionally challenged girls, and boys who have been identified as developmentally disabled or regional center clients. I think all of us know what that means. The motion specifically directs probation to stop the use of OC spray at Central Juvenile Hall, which is in my district, and to stop it within 45 days in the units that house youth that I just described. So I do think there's an overuse that is harmful to this population. It pains me to even say that we have to have our youngsters being sprayed because Perhaps they are acting out, or they have some other emotional conditions that I believe aren't being addressed appropriately. We know that many of them have already been harmed by trauma, and many things can trigger an emotional outburst by these young people. I also think it's a long time now for us to examine the effectiveness of the training and how staff are prepared. And I learned that the training staff used to get training from the regional center that is appropriately designated as a facility that can do this, especially for the developmentally disabled. But somehow, I guess during the pandemic, those training sessions stopped. I don't know why, but we need to find out. I'm also concerned that we haven't been keeping up in terms of providing data and oversight on these entities. And I don't know why that stopped. Even though the pandemic was here, we still should have continued to do that. The POC report stated that there were issues with the accuracy and validity of the data that was being submitted. So we need an oversight to see the oversight, in my opinion. In fact, the report states that they were provided varying and inconsistent data about who precisely has been sprayed, and including conflicting information about where youth were actually housed. Again, this is about our youth and who cares for them. And it also means our staff. If staff want to create those strong relationships with our youth, they're going to need to engage in a more trauma-informed manner. And we've always said that consistently on the board. The motion also intends to provide additional support for staff through the support of our newly created Department of Youth Development by authorizing their ability to expand the Credible Messenger program into the juvenile halls, starting with the one in my district, Central Juvenile Hall, and providing $2 million that has already been set aside in the DYD's budget to do this. We have heard and seen the effect of Credible Messengers. I think we all know that. And in Central Juvenile Hall, I have provided funding for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition that many of you here know, ARC, to go inside and mentor our incarcerated youth. These services that they provide help give opportunity and hope to many of these young people who right now are devastated and don't even have enough programming, as we have heard, and some of our board members and our chair have even visited and saw that first sight. And I understand that as well. I know at Barry J. Norda in Supervisor Horvath's district, you've also seen ARC and the Healing Dialogues in action also provide mentorship and services and have seen the impact that these credible messengers have on our young people. It's transformative in some ways. We all need at least one person, I think, who believes in us, and we want to make sure that these youth know that they have that support and that they can be successful as well. I think this is one of the most opportune times to provide that support that these youngsters need and to better engage our staff in probation to be more responsive and also receive the appropriate training and to make sure that they are adequately reporting the data as we know have been prescribed. So we are all looking, I believe, for a safer, wholesome environment and one where our young people can thrive. This has been a major problem for us for decades. And I thought we were going in the right direction, but given this report, it saddens me, Madam Chair, that we have to bring it forward. And I know my co-author wants to speak on this item, but I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Supervisor Solis. You're the co-author, Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Solis, for asking me to co-author this motion. I'd also like to thank the Probation Oversight Commission for answering the call to monitor progress on the elimination of OC spray and to keep the board informed of important developments. We are coming up on the 4-year mark since this board directed the Probation Department to eliminate the use of OC spray in all juvenile detention facilities. And in that time, there have been some positive steps forward. Within a year of the board's decision, the Probation Department eliminated the use of OC spray at all of its camp facilities. The Probation Department has made progress by updating its physical intervention policies and engaging labor in discussions around those policies. And the Probation Department has also updated its physical intervention training and has made progress in delivering this training to staff. Nevertheless, OC spray continues to be used at the county's 2 juvenile halls. And while the Probation Oversight's recent report points to less use at Barry J. Nydorf Juvenile Hall, which is in my district. Less frequent is not what the board mandated. This board mandated complete and total elimination, and that is what we must continue to demand in both of our juvenile halls, especially given the vulnerable populations who have been most at risk. According to the Oversight Commission, OC spray is used disproportionately at Central Juvenile Hall in units that house some of the county's most vulnerable young people. It is unacceptable that 4 years after making a commitment to total elimination, this board is now forced to specifically demand that OC spray be eliminated in units that house vulnerable populations, as Supervisor Solis indicated, youth identified as developmentally disabled, girls, and gender-expansive youth. I'm also troubled that the Probation Oversight Commission's disclosure that the Probation Department provided varying and inconsistent data about which youth were housed in a given unit when OC spray was deployed, which makes it difficult for the Commission to make definitive conclusions about who is suffering most from the OC spray deployment. This board has placed its trust in the Commission to monitor this issue for us, but the Commission can't do that work with unreliable data. So today's motion calls for a fast-track plan to eliminate OC spray in units that house our most vulnerable young people, the collection of data that will enable the Probation Oversight Commission to engage in meaningful oversight, and support from credible messengers whose engagement with young people will undoubtedly lessen the number of incidents that lead to OC spray deployment. The motion also brings the Office of Inspector General in to partner with the Commission on oversight, and the Inspector General's analysis to confidential information will enable it to access and analyze data that looks beneath the surface to see if specific staff are over-relying on OC spray so that additional attention, training, and support can be provided at that level. I see this motion as a renewed focus on our board's directives from 4 years ago, and my expectation is that focusing on specific units within Central Juvenile Hall to collect data and incorporate the support of credible messengers will shed light on the most effective way to completely eliminate OC spray from both juvenile halls. I look forward to the reports back called for in today's motion as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank the authors of this motion. I was in the state legislature when this body took this action, and it was carrying a package of juvenile justice right-sizing legislation, and so we were tracking this. And when I then joined the board and in my own onboarding efforts reviewed a number of past motions and was reminded about this motion. So as I sit before us today and recognize it is. So I guess my first question, Chief, if I may, is if you could tell us the current status of de-escalation training.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity, and thanks Supervisor Solis and Harwood for bringing this motion forward. When I came in about a couple years ago now, February, we can space it out going forward. I think the units that we talked about are the units that are very critical to us. I've been in those units. I talked to the kids. I talked to the girls, and they need more help, not less help.
Madam Chair, can I piggyback on your question, Supervisor Mitchell? I'm really frustrated because I want to be able to hear from you when this is going to start, and I do want to know. I want more details also in terms of what kinds of incidents, how these youngsters, why were they being disciplined in this manner? And don't we have surveillance cameras? Are we looking at other tools that we have, I think, afforded probation to be placed there? Are we really digging deep? Are we really taking this seriously? Because personally speaking, just describing the young girls and the young men that have developmental disabilities, and they're in our care, and I've been to Juvenile Hall Eastlake, and I've seen them, and it's a small cohort, not a large cohort. So I'm wondering, I understand they may be problematic for staff, but then that just begs the question, why are we not bringing in better staff who are better trained for that? And I think that is something that you need to take a handle on, because I would hate for us to go down this road again, and we are opening up ourselves for or more liabilities. So, I mean, can you answer that?
I think a lot of the fights are multiple people fighting. It starts off, for example, one-on-one, and then other people join in. Some of the fights are gang-related. Some of the fights are racial-related, racial tensions-related, African Americans and Hispanics. And that's what we see mostly at most of the issues. We do have cases where it's youth on staff, and that's when they challenge the staff. I've been challenged a couple of times at the Barry J. Norda for a fight, when they kicked it in my face, and I just stepped back, try to de-escalate it, and another staff came in between us. I've been challenged at Camp Alphabach by a kid that wanted to fight because he didn't want to go home. He felt he got a case on me because we want to keep him. And I told him, no, you're going home. Keep him at home. So I have seen that, and I have experienced personally. But I think, like you mentioned, Supervisor, one of the things that we need to do is a better job is training the right people to come in there. One thing we're looking at, who can we bring in? What level of experience do we need in there? You know, most of our DSOs that come in are people that come off the streets. Maybe we need somebody with a higher level of experience coming in. At night, we only require a high school diploma for our staff that works in the evenings. And the thing we're looking at, too, is what can we do to change our professionalism of our juvenile halls? Let's call it that. Let's make it a professional organization, and what would it look like going forward? There's a lot of moving parts when you talk about probation and everything that we're dealing with.
Supervisor Mitchell, reclaiming your time. And thank you, Supervisor Solis. You know, I agree with you. And as I listen to you, you know, it's multiple populations. The motion speaks specifically to regional center eligible clients, girls, and gender expansive youth. You know, to think that population has a desperate experience with spray seems to me would almost, you know, put us at ADA compliance. ADA is not just physical compliance, but, you know, experience as well. So, you know, it's two groups. And so this motion specifically talks about that group. I would hope that we would get to a point that all youth could experience a spray-free existence while they're in our facilities. So I hope we ultimately get there. But when we talk about the status of de-escalation training, it's across the board de-escalation. And in addition to that, training for our regional center eligible youth that is specific and nuanced. And so I'm assuming both forms of training ended because of COVID, and I hope as a result of this report back, we will hear about both forms of training coming back. The examples you cited in terms of being challenged, I'm not sure which population you're referring to, but it's clear that it's, you know, multiple populations that require some general de-escalation as well as some specialty training for our children who are regional center eligible. I don't know if the regional centers themselves are empowered to provide services to eligible clients while they're in juvenile hall. That might be something we want to consider to help augment your staff and to make sure that they're getting the kind of services they need. I look forward to this report back because I think us continuing to keep it on our own radar will help make sure that the youth in our care have a different experience. Again, I know it's going beyond today's motion, but I certainly hope we can get to a point where, as the state legislation was attempting to get to, that all facilities will be spray-free. Because, you know, separate from LA County declaring our care first, jails last culture, it is just not in keeping with the more current research-based modes of facility management. It's just antiquated from my perspective. So I hope that we could just, being that we are a cutting-edge county, making sure that we are bringing cutting-edge resources to the youth in our care. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Supervisor Barber, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm just going to be short. You made a comment that got me a little concerned, Chief, and that is that you were aware that they discontinued the training. And I think my concern is that given, and by the way, ARC has been very good at highlighting when there are concerns. And when I hear them concerned about what's going on in the halls, and I know it's an all hands on deck. And the comment was twofold: training, but also is centered around Campus Kilpatrick, getting some of those youth out to Campus Kilpatrick, because there are going to be individuals that are going to be problematic, and you have to separate. But you also have to train staff. And so you have a training unit, correct?
Yes.
So what is their excuse for not informing you that training has been discontinued? I mean, to me, because of COVID, if we can't send to the regional center or whatever, then we should be bringing training into the camps or into the halls and into the camps, quite frankly, both. And so I would put your training unit on notice that this motion is the direct result of their failure to do their job. And I mean, I'm being harsh because I'm shocked that that was discontinued, because that could have prevented the rise in numbers. So I hope you as chief will let them know that that is unacceptable, to not have that type of training, because I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the youth that we currently have that are housed have some sort of developmental disability that needs to be addressed, whether it be on the spectrum. I mean, so training should be just a no-brainer as it relates to working with specific population. And I'd be curious to know your input on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Supervisor Barger. And yes, I agree completely with the needs that the population presents. I know in doing our inspections, we found that at some of the facilities, sometimes up to 50% of the youth have IEPs, independent education plans, or in special education classes with LACO. They present with really serious diagnosed mental health, mental illness issues. They're under the treatment of therapists and doctors. Many of them have physical ailments. The Children's Data Network reported that approximately 80% have had contact with the child welfare system. We certainly are incarcerating a group of young people who present really tremendous needs. And I think the purpose of focusing that in this motion is twofold. One is that they're housed in individual units. The girls housed in individual units at Central, as well as the developmentally disabled unit, which makes it easier to target and track the progress on the phase-out of OC spray, but also because of the tremendous need that presents. So the need of the young people is certainly a key in the not re-traumatizing and not engaging with them in a violent way that actually discourages the rehabilitation.
So, I mean, and I would say, Chief, in closing, and then I'll yield my time back, that training is ongoing. It never stops, ever. And, you know, I know within the mental evaluation team, the host teams, they're constantly training and, I lack of a better term, I don't want to say re-energizing, but re-emphasizing some of the way that you handle and de-escalate. So I'm hoping, you know, I'm going to support this motion. I'm 2019, and we move forward and then we move back. And I think my frustration also that it creates some angst among the union as well. And this really has nothing to do with the union per se. It has to do with training within the department, and the fact that we need to address that moving forward constantly, always updating the manuals, always looking at best practices, because there are best practices out there, and it may show us that moving the population like we did at Campus Kilpatrick or separating out certain individuals is a way of de-escalating, you know. So anyway, I just thought I would chime in on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to follow up on Supervisor Barger's questioning, I want to hear from the PLC what your take is on the use of OC spray. That's a very direct question, Supervisor Tully. My take on the use of OC spray is that the reason that I'm a broken record on this issue and that we brought it forth in this report is that I truly believe that probation staff can and do operate facilities without the use of OC spray. I have seen probation staff at the camps in particular, where it's not an option, but also at the hall, choose not to use their OC spray and de-escalate with fabulous levels of skill. I watched two young men get puffed up in an altercation in a classroom, and a DPO at one of our camps talk them into complete peace and conflict resolution where nobody got in trouble, there was no physical contact. They do have the skills. And I really believe that this is somewhat similar to what Supervisor Mitchell said. This is just it's an old, antiquated tactic that doesn't take into consideration the harm that it commits. It's a physical, violent intervention, and it's something that should be in our past. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, I think you've heard it. How long have you been chief in our department?
A year and 10 months.
Okay. So I mean, we're not holding you responsible for what happened before you got here, but I think you heard from all 5 supervisors our frustration. Yeah, to think in 2019 we put forth a motion to phase it out, and I remember that board meeting very well. And who came down here was our probation officers, and they had signs that said we need training, and we agreed that it was a dual process. Phase out OC spray, but you can't phase it out until you give the staff another tool. This is the only tool they've used for all these years to get control of what they feel is an out-of-control situation where their own safety feels threatened. This is all they've known, and we know that this board doesn't believe that anymore, but we also want to tell them that we are thinking about them and certainly our staff's safety and well-being. But there are other tools, there are other tactics to de-escalate, and it's very frustrating for us that has not happened. We spent a lot of things during the pandemic, but we kept a lot of things during the pandemic. And your department should have figured out how to keep this training going during the pandemic, because you can't have one without the other. I think we would agree. We can't phase it out until we give the staff something else to do to take control of a volatile situation. So it's very frustrating to us that you've used that excuse, or the department has used that excuse. Now, I think everyone's really upset. I think everybody's being really polite, Chief. I think Supervisor Barger's use of the word harsh was not really harsh. And I think you heard behind Supervisor Solis's very measured, polite comments a very angry feeling, and I think we're all feeling that. Come on, Chief. This is important to this board. It's important to those who are incarcerated, who are in our custody. It's important to the staff members. This is a priority. You have got to get this done. And we just are not in the mood to have any more excuses. It's important to us. So next time you come before us and this report, better give us a direct, clear, timely pathway to how we can achieve the phasing out of OC spray. It's been done in other cities, it's been done in other probation departments. We've read about it, we've seen it. We need you to just really take this and make it happen. We're very frustrated, but we're being very polite today. So, thank you. And thank you to Supervisor Solis and Horwath. I hate saying thank you for bringing it forward. I wish we aren't doing this as well. It's really troubling to us. Anybody else want to speak on this?
I just wanted to add, I heard in response to Supervisor Mitchell's comments that there was a decrease, and that might be the case in my district, but it certainly isn't at Central. That's why we brought this motion forward. And I want to make sure that that's on record, that we're very clear about what's happening and why we're taking this motion today, in addition to the direction that has been given in the past.
Thank you. Executive Officer, please call the members of the public that would like to speak on this item.
Thank you. Will the following individuals please come forward and staff will assist you? You are in queue. Andrew Gravener, Annabella Mazariegos, Dr. Critical Tuesday, and Red Chief Hunt. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first participant is Jose Osuna. You may begin.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the time. My name is Jose Osuna. I'm a constituent of the 4th District, and I was the 4th District appointee for the probation reform and implementation team that was working on this in 2019. I just want to respectfully express my frustration with the fact that this continues to be a conversation. We've seen very little action for the elimination of pepper spray in the use of juvenile facilities. And I do want to express one other thing. We're talking about certain vulnerable populations. I would just like to point out that all of the juveniles that are under the care of the probation department in these juvenile facilities are vulnerable populations. They're all minors. A lot of them are what we would consider still children. So I take particular offense at the fact that we're not looking at the entire population that is within the custody of these juvenile facilities as vulnerable populations. I would like to point out that Marin, Napa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, and Solano counties, none of them use pepper spray. So there are examples of that. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your work on this issue. We're going to get there, but thank you for your work so far. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Okay, folks, item number 9 is a proverbial can of worms here. And also note that the statistics put out by Supervisor Solis and others are do not tell the picture. They say as much as they don't say. And the idea that our IT and these departments are 10 years behind the time is appalling and, in my estimation, criminal. Until such time persons within the system who don't go to jail for this and bring in the feds for civil rights violations, nothing's going to change. And as pointed out by this board here. And that's just the beginning of it. And this is appalling that you've allowed this to go on this long. And the bottom line is, where's the money? You got the money. You can do anything and everything. You haven't got it. Where are you going to get it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board at this time.
Okay, in person. Go ahead.
All right. Just go ahead and start speaking. Or? Yeah. So why is OC spray still being used on children? Like it never should have been used on children to begin with. But we need to not just at one jail, not just with every. There should be no use of OC spray on children. There shouldn't be use of OC spray on anyone. So why is that still being used? Just abolish OC spray, come up with better solutions for treating our children that don't involve carceral systems to begin with. Yeah, this use of OC spray is violent. It should not be used. It should not be anywhere near children. Let's stop the OC spray and come up with something better that's not this carceral thing that's going on.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Annabella Mazariegos. This is the way that we treat our children because they're still in the process of growing up. This is not a way to treat a child. But the problem is not here. The problem is that we are not enforcing education first responsible. We're having children. They're not responsible and they're not mature enough to have children. They go to school. The schools can do so much because they don't come with guidance. We need to start teaching at school guidance, ways of conduct, do better in life, to have some self-respect and care for others. And when it comes about the county, aside, not the board of supervisors, county employees, because they have an attitude. When it's law enforcement, some of them, they have the attitude, do as I say so. And right away, they have the position of intimidation. These kids are rebels. So they don't want to take orders from somebody who's already dictating them like they're the big thing.
Thank you.
We need
Thank you.
the status quo.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please. Yes, the alternative tool to OC spray is talking, counseling, love. Simple. You detained my son. He's a minor, but he's in Men's Central Jail for almost a year now. Booking number 629-8444. Okay? He's exposed to sheriffs having sex in the parking lot. He's not even getting food. You're putting him in a hole. I want you to release my son. Stop the time. Okay, so this item is about phasing out OC spray in our probation department. Right. But I hear you. If you want to talk to somebody else about this, okay. I want to talk to you. Okay, but this is my son. Okay, but stay on this item. We're going to stay on the topic. I need you to stop interrupting me, Janice, because you don't have clean hands right now. My son, because he's black, he's in Men's Central Jail. He's not in a juvenile program. If you really cared about my son, he has 3 booking numbers. You've got to stay on this item. You've got to stay on this item. Time for a second, because Ms. Hahn seems to interrupt me quite often. Stop my time for a second. No, you've got to get back on the item. So stop interrupting me. When you're going to have a white Christmas with your... So stop interrupting me. Remove OC spray and give them love that you can't afford to do. Thank you. Talk to them in love and have patience. That's how you can replace them. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The Red Chief, thank you, Hilda Solis, for bringing that motion up. It's overdue and things like that. Supervisor Barber, I like the way you reframe that about the chiefs and stuff like that. Chief, you're on a 90-day probation to get this done, man. Everybody up here is upset, and you have to know how to de-escalate in juvenile jails and stuff like that. It's no excuse. I have to agree with everybody up here. De-escalation, training, and things like that is a better tool than just pepper spraying and whooping kids and doing things like that. You know, we're in the age of 2022 and we're still doing that. That's humanitarian. That's no good. But like I said, Chief, you have a 90-day probation. When you come back here, let's have it corrected. I'm in favor of eliminating all the pepper spray. Chief, you have to do a better job. Thank you to Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you. From one chief to another. Next speaker, please. Do we have any other speakers? Okay. Hearing no other comments, colleagues, item 9 is now before us. Moved by Supervisor Solis. It's seconded by Supervisor Horvath. To approve this item, Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 9 is before you. Supervisor Solis. Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we're now going to move on to item 10, reducing the rate of...
In light of this, state and local environmental districts have introduced incentives in the form of grants and rebates for landscapers to transition to electric alternatives. While our larger landscaping associations will prepare for this, my concern is that our smaller, often unlicensed landscapers will not be. The objective of this motion is to ensure that all landscapers are aware of the available incentive programs and to utilize the county's extensive communication channels in a diverse and multilingual approach. I want to again thank our departments for their work. We have a responsibility to stand up and support our small businesses, and it's imperative on the county to empower them with the resources at their disposal. I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. I don't see any other colleagues, so I'll just say thank you, Supervisor Barger, for inviting me to co-author this motion with you. state is offering a lot of financial incentives to help with the phase out of these gas-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers. In 2024, when the state will be banning gas-powered lawn equipment, will be here before we know it. And I want to make sure that both landscapers and property owners are aware of any rebate or buyback programs available so they can start taking advantage of these programs now. It's incredible how much pollution these leaf blowers can produce. The state estimates that 1 hour of operating a gas-powered leaf blower is the equivalent of driving a car for 1,100 miles. It's not just bad for the environment, but it's really not healthy for these workers either to breathe this exhaust from these leaf blowers as they go about their work. It's also very deafening to the ear, and they're just not a good alternative for our gardeners and our landscapers to be using. And it's those workers who are most impacted by those toxic fumes. They spend hours with these machines, taking care of other people's lawns, and they shouldn't have to compromise their own health for someone else's beautiful landscaping. It's important that our departments work closely with the Office of Immigration Affairs and come back to us with a communication plan that will reach landscapers and property owners. I do wonder about all these, and they really are small businesses that are in the business of landscaping and gardening. And I just want to make sure this word gets out to all of them so that they understand the financial burden is not on them alone to replace their equipment. I think homeowners should take on that burden themselves, and we need to let them know that they're being phased out, but there are incentives. And so I think it's really important that this communication is in multiple languages and in culturally sensitive ways. So thank you for this motion, Supervisor Barger. Madam Executive Officer, are there members of the public who've signed up to speak on this item?
Will the following individual please come forward? Red Chief Hunt. Moderator, may we have the first call-in speaker, please?
And please go ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
The item that Janet Hahn cited, the 1,000 miles of a car running is the same as an hour of the leaf blow. It is so easily debunked. Why? Because some cars get 50 miles a gallon, like a Prius, and other cars, like a Lexus SUV, get 15 miles a gallon. So you shouldn't pursue a noble cause with easily debunked claims. It depends on how much mileage you get in that 1,000 miles that you're talking about. And that's a false, debunkable claim that defeats a really good point. My other point is, don't give the rebate or grant without getting the old item, the gas-powered one, the gas-powered lawnmower, the gas-powered leaf blower first. If you just give them the grant, people won't get rid of the items that you're trying to get rid of. So make sure you use logic and make it a trade-in for grant, a trade-in for rebate. Otherwise, it's self-defeating. It's a good idea.
Thank you.
Put some good
Thank you.
in there.
Thank you for that comment. Next speaker, please. Oh, no more on the phone? Anybody here in the room? Nobody else? Okay. Seeing no other comments, item 29 is now before us. It will be moved by Supervisor Barger. I'll second it to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 29 is before you. Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell. Aye. Supervisor Horvath. Aye. Supervisor Horvath. Aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger. Aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we'll now move on to item 38, Partnerships for Family Services Contracts, which was held by Supervisor Mitchell. And for members of the public on the telephone, you may now press 1 and 0 to comment on this item. Supervisor Mitchell, start us off.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just thought it was ironic that when Mayor Bass was here, I think her parting comment, she talked about the loss of substance use disorder community-based organizations in the community for a variety of reasons. And the reason I wanted to speak to this item is really in a similar vein.
I know this item has received some public comment in both the board and policy cluster meetings, and the themes discussed in the public comments echo the concerns that have been brought to my office by several community leaders. Community leaders have voiced concerns for the number of community-based organizations founded and led by men and women of color that have disappeared from our service landscape over the last decade or so. The truth is, quite frankly, the landscape itself has changed. Many CBOs founded and led by men and women of color simply no longer exist. They are disappearing, and we need to really ascertain why. I've met with some community leaders, and I've heard their concerns, and from my perspective, the issue is really twofold. The county does indeed have an obligation to look at our role in the changing landscape, which is the reason my office took the lead to really question the issue of equity in county contracting. The county has a role to play in understanding if we are perpetuating an unequal playing field that results in the systemic elimination of our long-standing CBOs providers who are our partners. I've been clear in my meetings and discussions that this is my obligation to make sure we're taking every opportunity to promote an inclusive procurement process. And I'm also committed to doing what I can to help to increase the opportunities for incubation, technical assistance, and capacity building so that our smaller, often service-providing community-based organizations can indeed be competitive. I've also been clear that there is another side of this, the back house side of our nonprofit organizations. Having had the privilege of leading several, both large and small, I know very well the responsibilities and the challenges executive directors often have in not only keeping the doors open, providing the critical community services, but also making sure that the back of the house operations are running well, your audits, your accounting, all of those kinds of things. Without those integral structures for your organization in place, it can become increasingly difficult for organizations, frankly, to remain competitive in a changing service provider landscape. So it's a two-way street, and I want to be clear that this is not just a DCFS issue. This issue exists across the county, and this is just one example. So I want to thank the DCFS director, Mr. Nichols, for engaging with myself and my office to begin the hard discussions regarding equity in the county contracting process. And it's my expectation that really every director of every county agency is engaging in these hard discussions because I believe the issue is indeed systemic. It might, in some instances, might even be implicit. So my office is here to partner. We know that we can't do this work alone, as the mayor said earlier. We need strong, healthy community. Really, let me just say that I've met with residents recently from Keep LA House Coalition, ACE, SAGE, and I shared with them, in essence, that while COVID-19 emergency tenant protections can't last forever, I remain committed to following up on the permanent tenant protections moving forward, because I think that's ultimately where we want to get to. But in the meantime, we want to talk about the fact that the county's current emergency protections are scheduled to end this month, and we want to at least minimally align ourselves with what the city of LA has done. And so Madam Chair, I'll hand it back over to you to manage the amendment process.
Okay, thank you very much. I have on the queue Lindsay, and then, or Supervisor Solis. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Take it away.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. I know that the motion that you're putting before us is well intended. It's an extension of 1 month to January 31st to align us with the city of LA. And on the front, I don't have a problem with trying to work with the city because it is very important that we work in tandem with them. But I do believe, in my opinion, the right thing to do is to explore the extension to perhaps 6 months. And I want to go over what that means. First, this aligns with our DCBA's initial proposed third phase of protections, and it will allow the county to get rid of, to allow the county to get the word out, to allow as many tenants to be aware of this extension. I think there's already confusion about that. A month extension, in my opinion, will not allow us to inform properly our tenants and property owners appropriately.
At our last September 13th board meeting, a motion was approved giving notice that the emergency tenant protections would end by December 31st, 2022. The board has the opportunity, I believe, to revisit our prior direction given the most recent conditions. Also, I believe it's critical to implement the proper assistance programs for especially vulnerable individuals and families and property owners, and I'm referring to mom and pop landlords. As of today, per DCBA, evictions are averaging about 3,000 unlawful detainers per month. Tenant protections in LA County that have kept families housed throughout the pandemic, as you know, are set to expire at the end of the month, meaning that more than 30,000 households could face eviction by the end of the year, according to UCLA's researchers' estimates based on county superior court records. Furthermore, a 6-month extension will help us reach out to the cities to help them implement permanent protections in their own jurisdictions before the lift of the emergency tenant protections. Today, also on the board agenda, Supervisors Hahn and Barger have lifted up the importance of collaborating and supporting the City of LA Mayor Karen Bass's declaration in the state of emergency on homelessness, which we all agree. It is imperative that we work together with the City of Los Angeles and any city that similarly declares a state of emergency on homelessness. We need to do all we can to reduce displacements to prevent more from falling into the homeless bucket. Together, I believe these two items, 62A with my amendment and 22 on today's agenda, are complementary and substantial motions that will help provide critical support to our most vulnerable populations as emergency protections are lifted. And I know members, time and time again, we've had several of our tenants' rights groups come before this board asking for more help and assistance. And I, as of late, have had many of my field offices inundated with casework because we are already seeing the eviction notices coming forward. So it is a problem, and I do believe we can try to settle on something where perhaps there's a middle ground. So I'd like to read this amendment, and it reads as follows. I therefore move that the Board of Supervisors direct County Council and DCBA to report back in 30 days on the feasibility of extending the resolution through June 30th, 2023 to reduce the number of households displaced in Los Angeles County, and to also direct CEO and DCBA to develop a small mom and pop landlord assistance program to assist small property owners with their non-mortgage related costs and expenses, and identify up to $5 million of funds from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and or American Recovery Program, and report back in 30 days. And I want to say and underscore, members, this is a report back. Obviously, we need to have the support and help of our CEO and our other individuals who I think can help us identify funding, because this isn't just a problem here with the county and unincorporated areas. I do believe a lot of our independent cities are also going through this as well and looking for ways of trying to get assistance and understand what it is we're doing. So I believe with that, Madam Chair, I'll conclude, and I believe Supervisor Mitchell does have some amendments to my amendment.
No, actually, the second part of your amendment was going to be my amendment, Supervisor. So I fully support the 6-month extension as long as it includes the report back on rent relief. I think it's irresponsible for us to extend it if there's no rent relief program. So hearing you read your motion it includes the language I was going to put forward. So
we need a second for her motion.
Second.
Okay.
Very good.
Just on your amendment, Supervisor Solis, what is non-mortgage related cost?
I think there are other things that landlords, in terms of upgrading, for example, their facilities, that they have been renting out and maybe not have received any rent. There's upgrades, there's paint, there's this, all things.
And why don't we offer mortgage related help?
I think that's where we want our CEO and our fiscal departments to help us identify where we can get support. It may not be where we're going to end up relieving everybody's back pay in terms of mortgage, but if we do a portion of it, and if we look at mom and pops, what I think this board has really looked at and figure that out in terms of need, I think we have at least something to look forward to. And we'll see what the report says when it comes back.
Yeah, I just know, I'm a little bit conflicted on this, but I'm going to listen to everybody because, again, I know I do hear a lot from our mom and pop landlords who are struggling to pay their mortgages. And it's an equation. You can't have a renter without a landlord. And I agree that we need to protect our tenants, but I tell you, I don't think our programs so far have been very helpful to landlords. I really, they're not getting the money, and we're talking about back rent, which you're right, they're probably never going to get their back rent. I have a landlord who lives across the street from me, and he knocks on my door all the time, and he tells me how much money is owed him. Like I think he's owed $60,000. He's never going to get that, so he's going to be distressed that we're going to continue this without. I like the second part of your amendment. I just don't know how that money is getting to the landlords. It just feels like it's a complicated process that is not helping them.
I think that, in prior meetings that we had, I did try to get something similar passed before and it didn't quite make it. But the intent was to try to get to mom and pops because I think they have been suffering. There's no doubt.
They have been. And
I agree.
Their mortgages are what their mortgages they have to pay, and they're having a tough time.
I don't think we can absolve them. I don't think the state has even done that. I don't think the federal government has, but I do think at least we're attempting, and there's $5 million there that we can pocket and use. And we should really get with our DCBA and with our departments to make sure that they can expedite it. We did it very well with some of our tenant supports. We should be able to do it now. I think we learned a lot. And if not, we'll get the information back. Maybe the CEO wants to opine on that.
Supervisors, I believe our Director of Department of Consumer and Business Affairs is present. I don't see him in a boardroom, but he might be able to shine some light on early attempts to establish this program under one of the earlier ARP funding tranches.
For the landlords.
Correct.
Yeah. Because again, this is non-mortgage related funding, and I know that they're having trouble paying their mortgages, and I don't know where the help is for them.
And as he comes forward, I'm wondering if, since it's a report back, and I know that you were in the process of clearly defining what constitutes a mom and pop. I know that that's not super clear yet, so we want to know mom and pop. And then we want to entertain if it can be for mortgage relief. The first two programs were for mortgage relief. So those would be the things I'd put on the table as a part of the report back if it's okay with.
Raphael, can you?
And then the other piece I would just say, Supervisor Solis, in what I was going to read in, but felt I didn't have to based on the direction you took your initial amendment, was I was hoping that we could look at ARPA funds as opposed to American Recovery Program funds. I think they have different criteria. And so
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't have an issue with that.
We'll look at all sources and try to identify the one that has the most flexibility to implement the program.
Thank you.
Raphael, can you clarify
Yes.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Raphael Carwell.
Good afternoon.
Director of Department of Consumer Business Affairs. As a matter of fact, we're in the process of negotiating an agreement right now to put out $5 million in ARP and mortgage relief. So we're in the very late stages of executing that.
To pay for rent.
Yes. Well, actually, yes. It helps provide assistance to small mom and pop landlords, but it's connected to their mortgage. So the difference here is that the current program design provides payments to those landlords, small mom and pop landlords that own 4 units or less, that actually have an open mortgage. Part of the discussion here is whether or not non-mortgage related payments. So these are for landlords that own the properties outright and don't have a mortgage. And what's being proposed is a direct payment to the landlord.
So you made a point, Supervisor Mitchell, about I don't know, I can't remember now, but I think something about how are we what's the criteria for small mom and pop? So I know we've been very clear through this pandemic that it's the corporations, it's a different animal. But even small mom and pops, they might have a few more than 4. And they, in my opinion, they would still be considered. Is this some national criteria that?
So there is, and that's the biggest and most complex issue of this.
Yeah.
Even locally, we don't have a strict definition of what's mom and pop. One thing I do have to give credit is to this board in the middle of the pandemic, before the state or the national government did any sort of mortgage assistance. This board took it upon themselves, and we defined for that program 4 units or less.
Yeah.
But it does merit a discussion and an evaluation of what we qualify.
But, and one more thing, Ms. Mitchell, and are you hearing what we're hearing, that some of these landlords are finding it very difficult to access these dollars?
There's not enough dollars to support everybody that needs help.
And even the dollars that are there have been difficult, you know, getting to those who need them. That's my problem with all of this.
Can we use Measure H?
Ms. Mitchell.
What we've heard in our office is, you know, a tenant needed to meet a certain criteria to qualify, right? It wasn't just that my income wasn't impacted by COVID and I just chose not to pay my rent. So what we are hearing is from landlords who know that their tenants didn't qualify, and so that's what's complicating their ability to access it, because they didn't qualify for the program. So thank you for defining for us what non-mortgage relief means. It means for people who own their property outright. So I guess clarification, that's so it's people who own their property outright,
yes,
who don't have a mortgage burden that the relief would apply to. So my question is, based on Supervisor Solis's amendment, is it only for people who own their property outright, or does her language capture both, people who are carrying a mortgage and people who are not?
It captures both, because we have an existing program that we're getting ready to launch for those that do have mortgages attached to their properties.
And the program you're about to launch will cover non-payment of rent for the next 6-month period of time?
It's not related, well, it's for mortgage arrears. So resulting from the non-payment of rent due to the COVID protections.
And so the point of this motion and our effort is to look at a go-forward basis. And so the original motion before us was to extend it a month. Supervisor Solis provided an amendment to extend it for 6 months and to provide relief to mom and pop.
For non-mortgage related costs.
Oh, Madam Chair, it's for both.
Where do we see that?
Mortgage and non-mortgage, because the way as you just heard from Raphael, or Rahal.
Yeah.
The way I just understood you to explain it was the program you're about to launch is for mortgage payments that are in arrears,
yes,
not prospective. This new program, the 6 month, is prospective.
Mm-hmm.
But it's already in place for arrears.
But can I just ask a clarification on something? Okay. We're getting caught up on the word mortgage, and I think it's important that banks, get reimbursed. But what about those that don't have a mortgage, that are living off the income that I know? And so, I mean, if that's what you're talking about, then that fills that gap.
That's what this language says. Non-mortgage related costs.
Madam Chair, as you recall, we've had widows come up here and say, I have 2 bungalows and haven't been paid, and that's what I live off of, right? So, yeah.
Okay, well, on this report back, it needs to be really clear how both of those folks are being helped and covered. So it's a report, this motion before us is to extend tenant protection 30 days, but Supervisor Solis's amendment says, okay, but in 30 days, also tell us what it would look like to extend it another 6 months. But then you've got to really, because I'm not sure when it comes back in 30 days where I'm going to be, but I'll tell you, I'll be a lot closer to where you want me to be if I can guarantee that our landlords, both those who own their property, need help, are living off of their property, are never going to get paid back for the amount that they're in arrears, because they've suffered through the pandemic as well. That better be very clear in the report back. You think
Completely
I'll-
agree, and that's been part of the discussion as we've been
Okay.
having
Quantify how
discussion.
much you're going to need. You said you're not going to have enough money. What do you giving us?
So come back and
I'm not-
say.
I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you're saying there's not enough money, which tells us that there are a lot of people that are suffering beyond those that aren't paying the rent.
So one of the things I think, our CEO always hates it when we say, what is it that you actually need? But, it's very difficult for us as policymakers to make good policy when you don't actually tell us what it is we need to do to create the LA County that we envision. So we know you don't have it, but I would expect for that, and we're not saying we're going to be able to find it, but let's not operate in a vacuum on this. Tell us what it is that we need to take care of our tenants and our landlords as we continue to ease out of this pandemic.
Completely agree, and that's why
Okay.
we appreciate the ability to report back.
Okay. You have your hand up, Ms. Mitchell?
My name is here, and
I know.
Yes, and mine has been there for a while.
Okay, coming up. All right.
Okay,
I think
so-
I've lost complete control of this board here.
So you call me whatever order is appropriate, Madam
Okay, I will let Ms. Horvath speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There has been quite a bit of discussion already on amendments and languaging around landlords and mortgages, but this motion needed to come forward because we have renters who are struggling, and we haven't heard from the public yet, but I'm gonna guess we're gonna hear from a lot of renters who need representation, who need help, who need to make sure that they are not the next statistic that is adding to the conversation we started this day with about homelessness. I want to make sure that we are not returning to what was considered normal before COVID. We needed this extension to have a conversation clearly, but at the beginning of COVID, we saw renters and advocates warning us of the loss of income could result in an eviction tsunami. I am concerned that we will then be contributing to our homelessness crisis, and we are so clear that no one wants that. We saw in September, losses point in time count showed an increase that was significantly smaller than we predicted given the widespread COVID crisis. And last week we know that Mayor Bass declared a state of emergency, and the LA Times reported that without the interventions of eviction moratoriums and cash payments, homelessness would have increased by 23% from 2020. The answers are right in front of us. We saw it happen by protecting renters. We significantly addressed our homelessness crisis with homelessness prevention tools. Now is the time to make sure that we are bold in our implementation. And while I'm happy to support what we're talking about here, I want to make sure that we are thinking about those renters who will be on the streets if we do not protect them, period. And as a renter, I encourage this board to double down and do more. And I know that's what we're trying to do with this motion and giving us time. And I am fine with making sure that we figure out mortgage versus non-mortgage and landlords, but we need to make sure that renters have a voice in this conversation, because that's going to be a significant part of this conversation and contributing to homelessness if we don't come up with solutions. Thank you.
That from the only renter on the board. And she vowed that she would bring that voice to our conversations, and she's doing that. Okay, oh wait, like I said, they erased everything. Supervisor Parker.
So
then I'll come back.
I agree with you, Supervisor Horvath, in terms of protections. And, I'm not being facetious. Maybe we should use Measure H or look at putting some of that into this, because the cost to house someone who's homeless is far greater than to keep someone in housing.
That's true.
Okay, we know that. That's a fact. But, what I'm going to say is, and I know we're going to have people speaking, and if I hear the electricity's turned off and they're being harassed, I want their address, and I'm going to personally drive over there and check it out, because we're hearing these anecdotes that should, even without eviction moratoriums, we have a standard of housing requirements in this county that need to be met. And that is separate from evictions, okay? And we've heard that last month when we had this discussion. But I also want to find out how many of the individuals that are behind in rent have reached out to their landlords to try to come up with some sort of way to at least come up to not even pay the full rent, but work with their landlords? I don't know the answer to that. And it's not as black and white. There are gray areas. And then you have landlords that are looking for opportunities to take advantage, evict, so that they can collect more rent. And I know that happens as well. This is a very complicated issue. And meanwhile, the mom and pops, which by the way, we're talking about mom and pops, but last time I checked, if you buy property and you are collecting rent, it doesn't matter whether you're mom and pop or not, you own that and you have a right. And we have laws in this land, correct? And so, I think it's a fine line. We have to protect the renters. We have to acknowledge that it is more expensive to house someone on the street than it is to keep them in housing. So we have to do more. So when I ask you to quantify it, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I think you can guesstimate based on what Supervisor Solis talked about in terms of the number of evictions that have come forward, an estimate in terms of the average rent right now in certain areas. I know it differs, but come up with or quantify that. And then let us know what the turnaround is in getting that money out. Because I'm also hearing that they apply, but it takes a long time to get that money. And then I've heard we had someone call that was a landlord, and the state paid the renter like $60,000, of which he was owed. And I think y'all are looking into it because we reported to you all for fraud because the tenant kept $55,000 of it, or 40 or something, and gave the landlord 15. And the money was supposed to go to the landlord, and it would have made this person whole. I mean, we all have different stories anecdotally that really jade me as it relates to what kind of program we want and who we're helping. Because clearly we're going to hear from people today in the audience who need help. And I am sympathetic, but I also am sympathetic to the mom and pops who are trying to navigate a bureaucracy that, quite frankly, we can't even figure out. We're trying to get clarification and mortgage versus non-mortgage. What does this mean? And I just feel like we need to your points, Chair, President, whatever, Han, is, we need to understand the consequences of our actions moving forward so that we don't exacerbate what is already a very precarious situation.
Right,
Thank
we
you.
don't want to create another problem. Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation. And, from my perspective, I think I started by presenting the motion by saying,
new that also tried to propose something to extend their extension, and they just didn't have enough votes, but I'm sure they're going to come back. So I have a feeling this is an evolving discussion, but if we're at least looking ahead, I think that helps us. It's a report.
Yeah.
It's a report.
And we usually, doesn't always happen, Supervisor Horvath, but we have tended to give the courtesy of report backs, even sometimes when we disagree with the underlining. It doesn't happen all the time. I remember the times it didn't, but most of the time, we do that for one another. Okay, are we all good up here? Okay, let's hear from the public on this item, Madam Executive Officer, as amended.
You are in queue.
Pamela Augustin.
Please call the names of those who are on the phone and in the room.
Will Anna Carrion, Andrew Gribner, Angel Diaz, Annabella.
30. Our landlord about a month ago told us she's selling the property and has begun showing. My neighbors and I can only imagine what is to come as we plan to fight for our home. In the same note, many Long Beach tenants are imagining what will happen in our city when you all ponder letting county tenant protections expire without providing crucial support to local cities in the way of a summit. I want to urge you all to extend county-wide emergency tenant protections for at least 6 months. We know that the emergency protections cut projected evictions in half, and now headed into the holidays and potential new surge, it is not the time to end protections. It is the time to be bold and to give hope. Without these protections, over 1 million tenants living in incorporated cities like Long Beach will be left without just cause protections and non-payment protections, leaving them vulnerable to eviction. I ask and encourage you, Supervisor Hahn, as my representative, support Long Beach tenants in your vote to extend
countywide emergency tenant protection for at least 6 months. I appreciate the steps forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Dan. Please go ahead. You may begin.
Yeah, hi. I have a column today on Daniel Gutt, Substack.com, called Undermining LA's Housing and Homeless Efforts. And, Supervisors, first of all, I am thrilled to see Holly Mitchell there. So much better, a breath of fresh air, rather than Herb Wesson. I am thrilled to see you. And actually, I'm thrilled to see Ms. Horvath there. We may have more in common than I realized, even though I come from a different political perspective. So good to see both of you there. In regards to following what the city of Los Angeles is doing, please, you can do a whole hell of a lot better. I don't know if you saw a story from WPIX in New York the other day, but LA now has, the city of LA has more homeless people on a head count than New York City now. So I don't think that it's a high enough bar to be at least as good as the city of Los Angeles. I am a property owner myself, but the number one best thing you can do right now is, with exceptions for mom and pop landlords, is stop the bleeding by broadening rent control. This actually hurts me, but it would be the most common sense thing you can do. Stop the bleeding by broadening or establishing rent control and have the local cities less reliant on their own laws, and just say, hey, we've got rent control with these 5 or 6 types of exceptions. You can help renters. You can help renters without hurting the small mom and pops. You can do better. Aim higher than the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you. Thank you. So engrossed in your comments, I didn't see the time. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Vera Gashtai. You may begin. Vera, your line is open. Please begin.
I just want to thank the supervisors for giving funding for this issue to help tenants and landlords. I'm a small mom and pop landlord, and my tenants have been very good. They've paid me throughout the pandemic. One couldn't, but I got the house from the rent relief program. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Kate Dioma. You may begin.
Hi, I'm a tenant in Long Beach in District 4.
Your question has been withdrawn. To alert the speaker that you have a question, press 1, then 0.
We have rent.
You are in queue.
Because our building was bought by a capital investment company, and they want to kick everybody out and double the rent. So they are remodeling, but we have been protected by the moratorium, and we expect that the minute that the moratorium is lifted, we will all get another 60-day notice, and most of us cannot afford to leave because we have been here, most of us, 25 to 35 years, so our rents are lower than market value. But there is no place to go because there are no affordable housing units available. So to prevent homelessness, preserving existing housing is critical, and one of the ways to do that is to stop letting people mass evict full buildings of people to remodel them and double the rent.
Thank you.
So
thank you. I appreciate your comment.
6 months would be a nice extension.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Juan Munoz Wazera. Please go ahead. You may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Juan Munoz Guevara, and I have been recently elected to the Linwood City Council, one of the incorporated cities in the 4th Supervisorial District. Linwood is a renter-majority city, and many of our renters are struggling. Tenants may not be entirely informed on these protections ending. I ask that the Board consider extending protections beyond the January 31st date to allow cities such as mine to consider our own renter protections. We want to implement permanent protections, but we need more time. I ask that the county work with elected officials in smaller cities to make this possible. It is my understanding that the county will hold a summit on tenant protections. I would like to get involved, but please don't end protections until we have access to these tools. I also hear the point about helping mom and pop landlords and support the funding being made available for them and efforts to make it as accessible as possible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for calling in. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Eric Previn. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Eric Previn from Studio City, and I'm not really a landlord and I'm not really a tenant, but I'm a homeowner. But I think that this is very good that you're extending some protections, but I think that, there are also mom and pop renters. I don't want to get all the folksy mom and pop love just on the landlords. There's also mom and pop renters. So let's keep that in mind as we do something smart. Now, what would be a really good way to subsidize the housing costs across the board is a question to ask yourselves, because we're heading into a very bad area with all these funding sources to give people money that they can't sustain without. It's a very lumpy mess right now. So I think holding rents to a level is appropriate, but I don't know. I think we're going to have to do some emergency protection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Previn. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Eric Filmarosian. You may begin.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Eric Martirosian, and I am commenting on behalf of JWCH Institute, which is a federally qualified health center operating in Los Angeles County. I would like to thank Supervisor Solis for her amending motion to item 62A, requesting a 30-day report back to extend the emergency eviction protection 6 months to June 30th, and for the development of a small mom-and-pop landlord assistance program. Families should not be forced out of their home and communities, particularly during a pandemic. It is unacceptable to let anyone fall into homelessness during the pandemic when they cannot afford to pay rent. As a frontline provider that served over 15,000 homeless individuals last year, we believe that we must do all that we can to stabilize our families and prevent this homeless crisis from getting worse. Families need eviction protections for at least an additional 6 months to further reduce displacement and disruption. For these regions, we urge support for Supervisor Solis' amending motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Salam Alim. You may begin.
Hi. In 1988, I remember in the 80s, a group of singers sing a song, "We Are the World," song for Africa, specifically for Ethiopia. I really think, like Bruce, he said that Philadelphia is the Prince of Philadelphia. We need to mobilize singers and all to come together to help you, the elected officials, to tackle this homelessness issue. We all are in it together. And I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Thank you. And, as I follow these economic issues with the Board of Supervisors here, I'm simply amazed at, didn't you hear about the earthquake up at Northern California at 4.2? That's a tsunami coming down. What are you going to do, 5 months, 6 months? It's called Where's the Money? And it has, if all this time with a pandemic and you haven't got sources for the money, and $5 million is better than no dollars. And the gentleman says there just isn't enough money. It's pay me now or pay me later, and it is not going to be any less painful 6 months down the road for all of these people. You're just avoiding the inevitable. And there's a guy named Thomas Sowell did a very nice book about this subsidized everything on this. So people, you can fess it up now, or spend more time and money analyzing what should have been done a year, 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other callers in queue to address the board.
Okay, let's go in person. Speaker.
All right, so there needs to be more, there needs to be extension.
That allows time for cities to pass their own protection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ana Carrión. Yo vengo del distrito de la señorita Holly Mitchell y también
And just in hearing from the small cities, we want to make sure people really understand that the actions we're taking today, dealing with the emergency protections, and separately, yes, we're going to have to work with Director Carvajal and make sure all of our small cities come to the table as we have the conversation, and we can't afford to wait, for the permanent tenant protections. That's not what we're attempting to do today. We're dealing with the emergency protections that we're about to extend the end of this month. And so I want to make sure that everyone is clear that we will continue to have the conversation about the permanent tenant protections and make sure that our small cities know about the meeting and get there. We need them there to participate. Thank you very much, and I encourage that I vote.
Thank you. Supervisor Barger, did you have something else to say on this? No. Supervisor Solis.
Yeah, thank you for accepting the amendment, Supervisor Mitchell, and just want to reaffirm to the people who came out today, thank you for coming. This is a really tough issue for all of us. We're going to work hard, and our report back will give us more information about where we can look down the line in 6 months and also look at more protections, not just for the renters, but also for small landlords, and making sure that there's more equitable division of funding for all those appropriate needs. So thank you all for coming, and I thank the board for their indulgence, and thank you all for working with us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I'm glad you clarified that, Ms. Mitchell, because again, tenant protections kind of has a different connotation too. This is the eviction moratorium. Is that correct? That we are extending the eviction moratorium, meaning no one can get evicted.
Which is a tenant protection.
I know, but we had other tenant protections that we were talking about before, where if you paid part of your rent, you couldn't be evicted. That's different than what we're doing today.
Emergency eviction protection.
Yes.
You're extending.
Thank you. Okay. Item 62A, as amended, is before us. Moved by Supervisor Mitchell, seconded by Supervisor Horvath to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 62A, as amended, is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Abstain.
Supervisor Barger abstains. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention.
Okay, thank you. And now we're to public comment on the remaining items not held by the board. Look how fast we got through this meeting. We'll now hear from members of the public wishing to address the board on all the remaining.
Okay, first member on the phone. You're up.
Our first participant is Dan. Please state the item numbers you're addressing today and whether you'll address a general public comment. You may begin.
Yeah, just general public comment. For 1 minute?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Janice, I want to apologize for snapping at you a little earlier regarding my comments on item 10, the problems at the animal care and control. The situation there is far, far, far worse than just euthanasia. Have to adjust, change the mindset that euthanasia is for animals who are suffering, and the reason that animals are being killed, young and old, big and small, frisky and quiet, is because there is a comprehensive failure in this department. It has an old school GM, it has old school policies and old school facilities and old school mentality. I have been covering this stuff both at that agency and LA Animal Service for more than 20 years. When I've reached out in the past, I have not received a response. I am always happy to share what I know, but there are people who know a lot more than I do. There are people who are a lot smarter than I am. I'm just reaching out to give you what I know. Should anybody want it, in the past several years, my column.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Appreciate your time. Okay, next speaker, please, on the phone.
Our next participant is Carol Cusdenal. You may begin. Please state the agenda items you're addressing and whether you'll address a general public comment.
Okay, I would like to speak on item 54, item 30. I support item 32. For item 54, the county's current wireless ordinances fail to protect the county adequately from liability and fail to protect residents from unnecessary risk. I ask the supervisors to adopt in its entirety the Encinitas Wireless Facilities Ordinance or the ordinance revision submitted by Fiber First LA in their entirety. Instead of the ordinance considered by automotive insurance, workers' compensation, errors and omissions policy, environmental pollution liability insurance, umbrella policy, endorsement to include the city as additional insurers. It requires that they show verification of coverage. It requires carriers or installers to show proof that all FCC standards have been met and that a fire assessment has been completed and mitigation measures have been taken if needed. It requires compliance with NEPA through EA or other means. It restricts site locations where permissible by law. It requires location preferences. It requires transmitters not to be placed in front of any door or window. It requires that the proposed project will comply with all applicable health and safety laws, regulations, and other rules like building code, fire code, electric code, local street standards, and specification and public utility regulations and orders. It requires an RF compliance report certified by an RF engineer under the penalty of perjury that small facilities, both individually or cumulatively, with all other emitters, will comply with applicable federal RF exposure standards and exposure limits. The report must include frequency bands, power levels, and the boundaries of areas with RF exposures that exceed general population limits and occupational limits. Those boundaries must be marked and identified at the site. RF reports will be reviewed by the county. It requires an environmental impact assessment to determine if the project is categorically exempt from CEQA. It provides reasonable accommodation under ADA, the Fair Housing Act, and other federal law for those people experiencing symptoms from electromagnetic fields. It requires application submittal notice to all residents entitled to that notice, with a statement for anyone who wishes to seek accommodation under ADA or Fair Housing Act to do so. It requires email notifications of all projects to all those who desire to receive them. It requires condition of approval in demonstrating that the project will comply with applicable FCC regulations and guidelines of RF exposure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thanks for your report. Next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Socia Quinones. Please state the agenda items you're addressing today and whether you'll address on general public comment. You may begin.
Okay, item 52, item 11, and public comment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, con el permiso de mis antepasados, yo pido la palabra. The Strategic Growth Council grant program is a 5-year plan. We want to ensure that the executive office of the board enter into contracts or agreements necessary to support the acting chief sustainability office so that the unincorporated communities of East Los Angeles be allowed to participate in the Transformative Climate Communities grant. My concerns are that the residents, business sector, and stakeholders of East Los Angeles have not been included in the process, and that outsiders have taken the lead. Unfortunately, some of the nonprofits listed have come from City Council District 14 that has had a bad history and a culture of corruption, and we see them as bad neighbors. After East LA Community Corporation got publicly burned, spin-offs were created. The damage that was done created deep wounds in our neighborhoods. The fraud that was committed and the corruption with the nonprofits associated with them damaged so many families and entire neighborhoods. The founding director of East LA Community Corporation was Jose Huizar. Information regarding the pay-to-play corruption in the East LA Community Corporation, a community of friends, and others have been sent to the FBI. Mayor Bass spoke earlier about the delays over a very controversial project. She exposed that she had no clue or the cultural competence to understand the contention situation surrounding this project. That land was seized via eminent domain and not used as a bus turnaround by Alley County NTA. We knew that was a land grab when the community opposed to this occupation and displacement had their constitutional rights violated by not being allowed first right of refusal. The Alley County Metro property that she stood on top of an abandoned oil well. So this is why we stood up against this project. It also was adjacent. It is directly across the street from our sacred burial ground that the Alley Metro desecrated and unearthed our ancestors' remains when we pleaded with them not to. This is why this is a problem. We have a history of the occupation and displacement of Mexicanos on the east side. Anyway, we have the right to self-determination, and we as the inhabitants of East Los Angeles must be included from participating in the process. We would not have been, if we had not been misled by those who handled the entire process, because there was no transparency, and some of the presentations that were done in the public were misleading. And the document that you can see on agenda item 11 is wrongfully titled Nuestra Tierra, Nuestra Lucha. These individuals failed to properly inform the community regarding the East Los Angeles Land Trust. We are requesting that we be included in the grant process and that this grant be met in the future. Yeah, thank you. I just want to add that overwhelming people are not from East LA. That's just for the record.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Courtney Shattuck. Please state the agenda items you are addressing today and whether you'll address the general public comment. You may begin.
63 and 66. Hello. My family and I were rendered homeless on November 8, 2018 by the Wolfie Fire. From that day forward, we have, including my architect and expediter, have been working diligently in our efforts to pull permits to rebuild our home. We were promised help, advocacy, expediting from all the agencies and representatives from our county. We're in District 3, as I said. I can argue that we have not received any of that promised help. Instead, we have been notified that our temporary living on our own property that we pay taxes on has been told that we have to have it removed by December 31st, 2022. We will now not be rendered only homeless from the fire, but also by the representatives who promised to help and advocate for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you switching back now? We'll go back to some in person and some on the phone, because people have also been sitting here. Yes, Mr. Shalani.
Good afternoon.
It's almost evening.
Hola, Madam la Presidenta y Vice Presidentas de Supervisors de Mujeres Maravillas. Me llamo David Gelote y yo soy presidente del Síndico de Bomberos y Paramédicos de County de Los Ángeles. Presidente también. You can help them with that later. Gracias, amigas. I rise today as the president of LA County Firefighters 1014. And I speak on closed session item 1, but I also speak in general comment. It's been a very interesting and heartfelt day, our issues aside. I want to give thanks to all of you on this last day, and we worked hard all week on firefighter issues. None more hard and more vigilant than your CEO, Isha Davenport. And I also want to thank her team, Tim Pescatello, Ron Wu, and my team, Tony Carsopolo, and all my executive board, and all the staff in this room here today as we work on all the other issues. And heading into the end of the year, I just want to tell you that I'm in full support of all the solutions that we came up with but we are just getting started, and we said this when we adjourned on Sunday night.
Gracias, amigas. I rise today as the president of LA County Firefighters 1014. And I speak on closed session item 1.
That you are going to affect in today's work, but also we serve on the streets. Everything you talked about today, I touch every day, all week long. And while we're not mentioned in the list of agencies always, I want to tell you I was texting with the mayor of LA as we spoke, and I said, I'm going to add onto the committee to help with alternative transport destinations, mental health issues, and the homeless issues. I've already talked with the CEO, and I know this is not why I came up to talk, but I was deeply affected by today's meeting. How can you not be? And so on that note, I just want you to know we commit all of our resources to help you on not only all the issues that we need to take care of the fire district, to take care of this great county of LA. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, and we know that you've been working really hard with our CEO and the negotiating teams, and I think I can speak for my colleagues that we are so supportive of our men and women in our county fire department who are our first responders, and you do touch all the issues that we talk about on a daily basis. So we thank you, and please pass on our support of the men and women in this great department. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Miro Koletic. Janice Han, the president. Well, glad to see you again. I welcome our District 3 amendment and restating the County of Los Angeles COVID-19.
I can speak for my colleagues that we are so supportive of our men and women in our county fire department who are our first responders, and you do touch all the issues that we talk about on a daily basis. So we thank you, and please pass on our support of the men and women in this great department. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Miro Koletic. Janice Han, the president. Well, glad to see you again. I welcome our District 3 new addition, Madame Horvat, and I also want to commend Supervisor Mitchell on amendment and restating the County of Los Angeles COVID-19 tenant protections resolution of January 25. I see your signature in the back, so I want to commend you for it. I have a question. Is this resolution, does this resolution have a force of law in county jurisdiction?
Honestly, this is public comment, and we're not really supposed to engage in question and answers, but somebody
anyway,
could help you with...
I would like to get some help.
Okay.
From somebody who's going to help me.
Where do you live?
Answer those in Madame Horvat's district.
Okay. Well, we do have in the back corner there, sir, someone, or John.
Okay.
And Supervisor Horvat.
I think I'm pointed in the right
Yeah,
direction.
great. We want to help
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sitting through the meeting.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Geneviève Claverol. I'm going to speak to items 32, 39, and 42 in public comment. On item 32 is that AB 361 and to continue to have closed meeting and so on. You know, it's time to reopen because many of the commission lately cancel their meeting at the last minute. Also, meeting last 10 minutes, you know, they don't give it down. And I think it's about time to reopen. And it's about time not to wear masks. I don't know where Dr. Ferrer get her science, but she's not getting it in the right place because what she quotes is not appropriate. The reason we have not many hospital beds is because for the last few weeks, many of the hospitals have to close their hospital. Sometimes 150 beds because they don't have enough nursing staff. That don't mean we don't have, bed because of COVID. And when I talked to Dr. Ferrer the last time, she told me, I asked her why she has 80,000 under investigation. She said, oh, when we have 700 hospitals. We don't have 700 hospitals in LA County. We have 70. Maybe somebody need to tell her that's the difference between 700 and 70. I am very upset about that. I'm very, very, very upset. And on item 39, I am concerned that you, for the financial report of DHS, you accept, received and filed. DHS is millions of dollars deficit this year and the coming year. How come this was not brought here so it could be discussed and was going to be done to stop it? Item 42, I spoke briefly under item 30, 32. It's imperative that a hospital can obtain temporary nursing staff so they don't have to close bed because we don't have enough nursing. So please, I hope you say yes to 42, and that's what I have for today.
Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that. I know what you're saying is true. I've spoken to Dr. Galley about the staffing issue in our hospitals, and I did mention about the traveling nurses and temporary, and she said that is a problem nationwide. So there's a nationwide staffing shortage in our hospitals. But thank you, Genevieve. Okay, next speaker, please.
Yes, the Red Chief on item 22, which I got looked over it, the general public comment. Can you put me 2 minutes up there, please?
Yes, we were going to give you another minute because we moved.
Thank you again. Item 22, it's a great venture that we come together with the county, but the only way that would work if everybody is together. We have to have DHS, Department of Mental, everything has to come together. We're looking at 70,000 homeless people with no solution. I gave you guys a solution in 2004 over at City Council, me, Matt Dowd, and Zumadog, but it was overlooked. Now we have a situation that has just blown out of proportion, and we can't get nothing done. Here's the reason why we can't get nothing done. I've been through 3 programs, and I sit down and talk with all the people from DHS and things like that. Yeah, well, they know the statistics, but they don't know the logistics. And this is the problem that we face, is that the logistics is not being done compared to the statistics. And if we don't get on board now, Carol Sobel filed that injunction in 2004, and nothing has been done. Here's what the whole deal is, that I got 100 friends with vouchers, but they can't go and use those vouchers because won't nobody take them. $1,800 rent is $2,500. That's where the main problem is. Not unless we call for eminent domain on 1/3 of all new properties will we solve this homeless problem. We will create 72,000 new units if we can get the president to call eminent domain on 1/3. They have to take the vouchers, else we're going to be in the same position 20 years from now. Thank you. This is the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you.
Linda Hobbs, General Public Comment. Hello. I'm a retired teacher and a member of First Financial Credit Union. The current CEO of the credit union earns $460,000 per year. The chief financial officer earns $240,000 per year. Please ask First Financial Credit Union to delay closing the Torrance branch on December the 31st, 2022, until all the teachers and members have been notified of the closure and granted a public hearing. There is an easy financial solution. Keep the Torrance branch open 2 days per week by reducing the other 9 branches' Saturday hours to twice a month rather than 4 times a month. I thank you for all your great work.
Thank you. Well, Torrance is in my district, so can one of my staff members, anybody here? Hello? Get the information from her? Liz, you might be the only one in the room. Is there, oh, there goes, okay. Because you had some good suggestions, so if I did write a letter to them, I would want to quote some of those suggestions, which seem very reasonable. Thank you. Okay, next, we're now going to go back to the phone.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, on the phone, the next speaker, please.
Our next participant is Dick Hogue. Please state the item numbers you're addressing today and whether you'll address on general public comment. You may begin.
Yes, Dick Hogue, Granada Hills. I would like to speak on item number 54, item 32, and public comment. I support item number 32. For item 54, the county's current wireless ordinances fail to adequately protect the county from liability and fail to protect residents from unnecessary risk. I ask the supervisors to adopt in its entirety either the Encinitas Wireless Facility Ordinance or option 2, the ordinance revisions submitted by Fiber First LA in their entirety instead of ordinances considered in item number 54. The Encinitas ordinance is currently in effect in California and requires 16 things. I'm not going to get through all 16. I'll speak as quickly as I can. You can cut me off when my time is up. Number 1, it requires commercial general liability insurance for bodily injury and property damage, automotive insurance, workers' compensation, errors and omissions policy. And this next one is really important, environmental pollution liability insurance. Let me repeat, environmental pollution liability insurance. Another point that it requires umbrella policy and endorsement to include the city as additional insured. It requires that they show verification of coverage. That's all point number 1. Point number 2, carriers or installers to show proof that all FCC standards have been met and that a fire assessment has been completed and mitigation measures have been taken if needed. Number 3, compliance with NEPA through EA or other means. Number 4, it requires the restriction sites be located on the level. And the boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You can always submit the rest of your comments to the board if you haven't gotten through all of them in the 3 minutes. Next speaker, please.
Next, we'll hear from Vered Gasagi. Please state the item numbers you are addressing today and whether you will address on general public comment. You may begin.
Hello, this is Vida Gashkai. I would like to speak on general public comment, item 11 and item 54. I'll start with general public comment. I'm the president and co-founder of First Block to Whittier Boulevard. We are a grassroots group in the city of Los Angeles who are trying to deal with the fact that we have no insufficient services, basic city services like street sweeping. Our major streets haven't had street sweeping. Major streets like Whittier, Soto, Washington, Olympic, etc. have not had any formal street sweeping in over 40 years. I live on Whittier Boulevard. We have storm drains that are packed with trash. On the Caltrans side, we have the largest freeway system, interchange system running through our area. Because of the homeless crisis and illegal dumping, items are sitting around as kids are walking to school. A lot of our students a lot of our schools are right next to the freeways, and there's a lot of trash. And it's really degrading conditions, and it's gone on for over 20 years. I've been in the community 17. So I just wanted you guys to be aware that we have done 33 community cleanups, and we've picked up over 230,000 pounds of trash. And we would like support from the County of LA for ground crews that can clean up after mentally ill, unhoused people who are digging through the trash or hoarding trash, and also to supplement sanitation and street services in the city of Los Angeles to clean out our storm drains that are packed. These clean storm drains that are just packed. We can get only what we could see, but it's packed all the way down full of trash. We need the machines to come in. Just to make you guys aware of that situation, it's unacceptable in 2022.
Can I ask you where you live? I think I missed that in the beginning. Where do you live?
In Boyle Heights.
Okay.
And we've had, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So item number 11, I'd like to address the fact that there's mistrust with East LA Community Corporation. It's related to Jose Huizar and backroom land deals. And Kevin De Leon has kept 6 of Huizar's staffers. Also, there's a 5G tower that was built right on top of a community garden in the Casa de Mexicano. And ELAC Community Corporation that proposes to be, champions for community gardens, and the community allowed that self-radiating tower to be there, which is going to be hurting those plants and the community as well. And that will lead me, we don't, East LA Community Corporation, and I wanted to just, one moment please. The East LA Community gathering would almost always end with games of poker or dominoes. She is reunited with her husband, Robert Ramos, her son, Richard Cervantes, and her best friend, her sister, Mabel Aguilar. Marissa is survived by her children, Robert, Jose, Maria, John, and Mark. And you might know Mark Ramos, who is president of UFCW Local 1428 out of Claremont, which is Missouri. Roberta and Michael and her daughter-in-laws, Kang Sun,